Good evening. Welcome to the Willmar City Council meeting for Monday, April 16th, 2007. Roll call.
Mayor Heitke.
Here.
Councilmember Reese.
Here.
Christensen.
Here.
Anderson. Swenson.
Here.
Gardner.
Here.
Dockin.
Here.
Fagerly.
Here.
DeBleek.
Here.
8 present, 1 absent.
Thank you, Kevin. It's our practice to begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City Council meeting and to the chambers here. We have a lot of our citizens here tonight, and to the citizens who are watching this meeting on our cable access, welcome also. I'd like to begin the meeting on kind of a sad note, and I'm going to ask Councilmember Gardner if he wishes to comment further about this. But we lost one of our young adult men who serves in Iraq this week. The news came into the community on Saturday, and Steve, would you like to comment further about that? I think you received the news first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We received a phone call, our family, earlier in the day that our friends had lost their son in Iraq. Army Sergeant Joshua Schmidt was killed several days ago in Iraq on his what they believe to be his final mission, scheduled mission in Iraq prior to his coming home to his family. We have been acquainted with the Schmidts for over 15 years, back when we all lived together in the Sperryville neighborhood. Our daughters have known each other for years. We were out to the Schmidts last night, and I want to tell you that these folks are holding up. They are in such pain, and we just want to come alongside them and help to comfort them and to give them strength in these next days ahead. They're amazing people. Their concern was for our situation with our son-in-law in Iraq and with our daughter and grandson back home. And this is who they are. It was an amazing thing to walk, to drive in and see all the flags down their street. Everybody's just going to come around them these days. Joshua is and Joshua and my son-in-law actually met in Iraq quite somewhat by accident, and I suspect that might have been quite a visual sight, because Joshua was short of stature and my son-in-law is about 6'4", but they I believe hit it off quite nicely when they were there, and we have yet to hear from our son-in-law, and I'm sure that he will be feeling that loss as well. Josh is survived by his parents, Greg and Kim Schmidt of Willmar, and his sister Jessica, and his wife Andrea, who is in Germany and will be coming to the United States on Wednesday. They don't really, to my knowledge, have a lot of plans done yet, but I just do ask, and I know that everyone will hold these folks close to their heart and in their prayers, and as we mourn with them as a community.
Thank you, Steve. That's a very sensitive tribute. Joshua is the second young man from our community who has given his life in Iraq. He's a graduate of our local Willmar High School, and his family lives just north of Willmar. And we, as a city and as a city council and as the mayor, we extend our condolences to the family. and assure them of our support in the days ahead and in the time ahead. The other piece of news I want to share with the community is another somewhat of a sad note, and that's one of our former city council members, Wilkie Norstein, passed away. Wilkie was a member of this city council. He was elected in 1978, and he served from January 1st of 1979 until December 31st of 1986. So again, our condolences to the family of Wilkie Norstein and for his service to our community. We thank him for that. Now, we will step into our agenda. First of all, I'll ask our council members if they have any proposed additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda. I have a couple of items for the council members. This will happen under miscellany. We will look at a resolution regarding some street bonding issues that our city administrator will explain to us at that time. I want to make a comment, a little bit of discussion with the council members about the housing task force that is nearly formalized, and I will be submitting that list to you at the next meeting. And then I also want to comment a little bit about the airport and my comments about vetoing an issue at the last city council meeting. I want to explain what I'm going to do at this point to the council members. We will then move into the consent agenda. That's number 5 on the agenda. Council members?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Councilmember DeBleek?
Would like to pull the Planning Commission minutes of April 11th.
All right. Anyone else? All right. With the exception of the Planning Commission minutes of April 11th, and this also includes an appointment to the Planning Commission of Mr. Kent Larson. Kent was referred to us by the Chamber of Commerce as an individual who would be appropriate for this committee, and I submit that to the council. Kent Larson works with, I forgot, it's in here.
Joy or something?
He works with Command Center Staffing. He's a branch manager. He's a member of the Chamber of Commerce in Willmar and previously in St. James. He served on various church boards, married and has 2 sons. His address is 1015 Elizabeth Avenue. Again, with the exception of the Planning Commission, those in favor of approving the consent agenda say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Councilmember DeBleek?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Item 8 in the Planning Commission minutes under miscellaneous.
Go ahead.
Planning Commission approved purchase of some property from Quest Communications and along right-of-way, which would be designated for a bus stop facility that CAT is pursuing to develop in that area. Purchase of the property, I just would like to refer this to the mayor or to the city attorney to drop the purchase papers for that piece of property and complete the purchase. I think the only requirements for the city to purchase land is for it to be approved by the Planning Commission. And the amount of that purchase was agreed to at $1,000, if I understand it correctly.
All right, so you want this referred to our city attorney.
Yes.
Mick, is that the proper procedure here?
We should make that into a motion.
Make it a formal motion, Bruce?
Okay, I can make that motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second to refer this issue of purchasing some land to our city attorney. Any discussion on that? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Now we are down to our scheduled...
That's all I have. Motion to approve the Planning Commission minutes. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the Planning Commission minutes of April 11th. Any other discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Now we are down to number 7 on the agenda, which is the first of 2 public hearings. And I will now open the first hearing, which is to consider an ordinance to rezone certain property, Chapel Central Incorporated. And I'll call on Bruce Peterson, who's the Director of Planning and Development for the city, to explain what this is all about. Bruce?
Mayor Heike, members of the council, the request is by Chapel Central to rezone a residential property directly west of their site on Gorton Avenue. this action should be very quick in that the applicant has withdrawn the application and no longer wishes to rezone the property. So I would simply request that the council take no action on the ordinance in front of you.
All right. That's easy enough to do. Is there any comment from the audience about this or any questions? The public hearing is closed. Council, there's no action, no motion. It just ends at this point. Right, Kevin? All right. We will go to the second public hearing, which is to consider an orderly annexation of the property on the east side of Willmar called the Mast property. This public hearing is now open. Bruce, would you explain what this is about?
Mayor Heike, members of the council, the city of Willmar received a proposal by Greg Mast to annex property east of Civic Center Drive and east of the BNSF rail line on the east side of Willmar. The joint orderly annexation resolution is for property that totals, in your notes it says 55 acres or more. The final survey of the site, when combined with the REA property, which is adjacent to it and also subject to annexation, it totals 61 acres. So the correct figure in the resolution is 61 acres. The annexation has been approved by the Planning Commission and has been approved by Willmar Township. The purpose of the public meeting tonight, and it's not a public hearing, it's a public meeting, and it's a statutory requirement for an orderly annexation. The state statute simply requires that the city and or township conduct a public informational meeting prior to taking any action on an orderly annexation. Staff would like to remind the council that the discussion tonight is really focused on the annexation and is not project specific. If the property is annexed, the Planning Commission and the council will have to deal with a specific project in the future. It's a recommendation of staff as well as the Planning Commission that the council approve the orderly annexation and execute the joint resolution.
Thank you, Bruce, for that description. Now to the audience. If there are members in the audience that wish to say something about this or ask some questions or make some comment, now is the time to do it. Simply raise your hand and I'll ask individuals to come to the podium. At the podium you should give your name and your address for the public record. Would anybody in the audience wish to comment about this? Please come up, Warren. Couldn't see your face, but I could see your hair. Welcome, Warren.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Name is Warren Erickson. Mailing address, P.O. Box 628, Willmar, Minnesota. Physical address, 9101 North Shore Drive, Spicer. I sent, I believe, to every one of the council member and the mayor a letter and some concerns that I have. I want to preface it by what Bruce said, too. I have no problem with the annexation, but I need a clarification before I go on. Are we strictly talking about annexing in our hearing, or are we talking about zoning also tonight?
Bruce, can you help us on that?
The orderly annexation resolution specifies zoning as well, so it's a combined issue. When the city annexes property, they typically annex it with a specific zoning, but that doesn't make it project specific. It just means that it's being annexed as a specific zone.
And what's the zoning that's being proposed?
Zoning that's being proposed is industrial, and that is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan.
Go ahead, Warren.
Okay. With that being said, I'd like to pass one letter around that I did not have at the time when I gave the other information.
You have enough letters for one for our city clerk?
Yeah, I believe there should be. The letter that's going around is a copy from Mr. Bill Bernard. Bill Bernard owns 55 acres adjacent to this property in the city limits of Willmar, and I'll let you read that individually. He has some concerns about, now again, not the annexation of this property, but the classification of it. So, again, going back personally, again, I want to reiterate, I'm not against the annexation, but tonight then I'd like to address the zoning of this parcel. I'm personally a little concerned that with my 105 lots that I have in Trentwood Estates, and with this being zoned commercial, whatever it is, how that might affect me in the long run. Just a little tidbit on this. Last Friday, the Chamber of Commerce had their chamber connection at Midwest campus, and I went out to that. There was about 60 people that attended it. I found it very interesting when a question was asked what kind of investment they have out there. They said they've invested approximately $1 million on the property, if I remember correctly, and so far they've spent $5 million on improvements out there. So my concern comes back is if this is annexed in and it's annexed in under a commercial industrial part, how that's going to affect the rest of the land in that area. And again, I'm not going to get anything on the type of zoning or business going in because I understand that's not at this hearing. I do have one other concern I guess I'd like to share, and probably this could alleviate some problems in the future. I was not personally aware that the Planning Commission was even considering this or this annexation until it was approved by the Planning Commission and to move it on to the City Council. Likewise, I did not get any notice, and probably again that's the law and how it is. I know you're not doing anything under the table, but in the future I think it'd be nice if property owners in I don't know what radius, in an area like this, a half mile, whatever, that we were at a chance to even go to the Planning Commission and express some concerns. The reason that I sent those two drawings to each of you is just to give you a visual aspect of the area that I'm concerned about and the area that Mr. Bernard is concerned about. And if we go ahead tonight, or if that is the plan, to annex it in and go to the zoning that you're proposing, I have two issues on it. One, I think it's going to bring down I know it's going to bring down the value of my development, 105 lots, and the dollars that I've got invested in there. Number two, I think it's the school out there, I think with Midwest out there. And then the other issue I have is I don't know how many acres we're going to have in the old airport being turned into commercial, industrial development. It seems like we're going to have one on the west side, one on the east side. As a developer, you know, we always try to fill up what we can and then go on to the next parcel so we don't have so much money invested. So my question would be that if the city is going to start investing this year in the old airport, you know, how is that going to affect if this parcel out there and then other parts come into the city as far as investment and costs? I don't know. It's just something that I'd like you to look at and discuss in a very open manner way like you normally do, and be aware of how we are impacting other people in that geographical area. That's all I have, unless anyone, excuse me, has any questions for me.
I'd like to put into the record your report that you sent to me, and I'd like to read this. You dated it April 16th, 2007, and this is from Warren Erickson. He says that these are the concerns. It's detrimental to the Trentwood estates, especially lots that would have the trains passing in the backyards. Lot 20, which is a large lot, has water and sewer stubbed into it for assisted living center and borders the railroad spur line. I believe there has only been 5 occasions that the spur line has been used for storage. If anticipated the number of trucks coming in is 20, then why cannot the extra 7 trucks take the product out? What hours of the day would the cars be moved on the tracks? He quotes the Planning Commission saying the area is not feasible for other types of development due to its proximity to the bypass and limited access options. Warren says he does not agree with that statement when we have Woodbury Addition within the city limits and City Heights outside the city limits that border the bypass. To what degree have the government entities worked out with Burlington Northern Santa Fe to abandon the spur line? Has the applicant explored other sites, such as the new Senex site on Highway 12 near Atwater? What shows that a community is prosperous and expanding better than housing developments versus steel buildings as you drive by a community on a bypass? What guarantees that there will be minimal train traffic? What about in the future as additional industrial development occurs? When I developed the Trentwood Estates, I was under the impression that the railroad spur would be converted into a walking and bike path in the future. This is evident by the walking areas of my plat that connect to the railroad spur. The area is currently in a period of change, the redevelopment of the Willmar Regional Treatment Center into a technology campus, the new government center areas, the school, and the future development of the residential area. Willmar has an area that is currently industrial and is being expanded with the addition of the old airport site. I understand they need a spur line, but in the current industrial plan general area, there are spur lines. There's a spur line by the GTA elevator and wood processing plant, and there's a spur line by the Land O'Lakes elevator. I'd also like to read into the public letter Mr. Bernard's letter. This is addressed to the mayor and city council members. He says that he's not able to attend, and then he says, our group is not against the orderly annexation of this property in question, but we are concerned with the following points. Is industrial reserve the best use of this land when we have other large tracts available and more coming online when the old airport is converted into industrial land? How can we as the owners be assured that the types of businesses allowed in this area will not lower the value of our property? We understand that the property is being annexed in for a heating fuel palletizing plant. What type of noise and pollution issues are there with a plant like this, and how will that affect the surrounding areas, our property, the Midwest campus, Trentwood Estates, and Regency Trailer Park? We do not want the spur line to be used for rail car movement. It might start off with only 1 or 2 cars a day, but how many will it be supporting in 5 to 10 years? As a progressive city with existing parks and walkways, why would you as representatives of the people not want to keep the option open to actively pursue the use of the spur line for a trial that would hook up to the trail system by the high school? With the development of the Midwest campus and Trentwood Estates, we've had a number of inquiries regarding the purchase of our land for residential development. With the points made above, we cannot see anyone actively pursuing the purchase of our land for residential development. Signed, sincerely, Bill Bernard. Bill is an attorney, and he owns the land that Mr. Erickson pointed out. Any other comments, Warren?
No, thank you.
Council members, any questions for Mr. Erickson? All right, thank you, Warren.
Thank you.
There may be questions, so don't run away. Anyone else here in the audience? Steve, please come up. Welcome, Steve.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Steve Rehnquist, Executive Director of the Canada, Ojai County and City of Willmar Economic Development Commission. Personal residence, 3106 Eagle Ridge Drive West, in the northern part of the town. To have issues of any kind of controversy are never easy. And to have a highly respected person like Warren and Mr. Bernard, persons like Warren and Mr. Bernard opposed to something never makes anything easier. And to have a well-written document with some salient and some cogitative points makes it difficult for members of the council to make a decision. However, I would like to just speak in terms of the economy and separate personalities or separate persons of whatever stature in the business community that they may have. When a person looks at this site, I guess one of the things that one should do is start out by saying what has been the railroad's stated plans for this siting, for this track. And we have Mr. Fry from the BN here tonight, and should the council wish, I think he'll step forward and say that the BN has never planned on abandoning this track and has never stated that they would abandon this track. Now, I regret if some persons, whether they be of stature or not, have had the opinion that this track was going to be abandoned, but I think the BN stated, the BNSF stated opinion should carry weight in that regard. Now, if that track is not going to be abandoned, one has to say what is the suitability, and if the likelihood with energy costs being what they are is only an increase in rail traffic, what is the suitability of this site? You know, we seem to talk about, well, whether it be used for housing or not. I would add the question with, Highway 12 isn't far away, but with the siding track being right there, with 2371 being on one side and a major arterial road being on the other side. Now, I understand somebody's got a huge investment in a certain area, but what is the future use of this land likely to be when it's got that kind of access to the highway? Now, I understand that we have an industrial park to fill. Bruce and I and Kathy Schwannis and Mick talk about this frequently, the work that we must do to fill this industrial park. But I could tell you it's been my experience in these many years in public work that you can't tell business where they're going to go. Business doesn't like to be told where it's going to go. And if somebody needs a siding for their business, and if this is one of the few sidings that are available, and I can tell you that we've worked with the Mass family for nearly 2 years in finding a siding that would work for this pelletization plant. And that we've looked in Pennock, we've looked in Candy, Ojai, we've looked by GTA, we've looked out by the turkey plants elevator. We've looked in a number of places, and we found either that there was land not available or it wasn't available for a price that we could work with. So the Mass themselves actually found this land, but it turns out it is available. I believe it is suitable. We're going to fill that new industrial park. We will. It'll take a while because there's a lot of acres there, but we're going to fill it. But for that industry that has the unique application for a rail siding, we don't have it. And for unique application for access to a highway, we don't have it with that new industrial park. And that'll make it a little harder to fill. And for somebody that's in competition for major businesses with places, cities all around the country, I can tell you that it's a real asset to have that. Now, we have the Midwest Technology Campus across the street from this facility. I would also advise the council that as the Midwest Technology Campus was not built with the idea of light manufacturing in mind, that yes, it is the possibility that there will be an appetite for companies that want to be located close to a research and development park, but have light industrial applications or fabrication or assembly. That yes, it is quite a possibility that the day will come in the next few years that we'll see more interest in this site. So the decision you have to make is indeed an important one here. And I respect the people that are opposed to this motion or this resolution, this opportunity tonight to annex this property and rezone it. But I can tell you in my mind, as the leader of your economic development efforts, that indeed is the highest and best use and most probable use for that property. Is there any questions from Mayor or any members of your council?
Council members, any questions of Steve? Steve, could you clarify perhaps this annexation proposal is likely then to lead to this pelletization operation, and they need a spur line. Is it possible that they could have those needs met by a spur line on the west side of the city in or around the old airport property?
I think it would be a factor of cost, Mr. Mayor. That with the spur line there, a siding off of the spur line would be a fairly reasonable cost. Whereas in some of the other areas, unless I'm not understanding your question, some of the other areas where track could possibly be laid, it's a significantly larger project and thus more costly.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Reese.
Reese, yeah.
I've only known him for 24 years. I forgot his name.
As long as we have you up there, Steve, I guess I'm looking at the piece of property and trying to envision where would the access, the driving access to this piece of property be at the current crossover of the tracks, and is that where the trucks would be accessing? Because there's no other place to access it right now.
I believe it's going to be across the old rail the poll yard, but
Yeah.
I'll ask one of the members of the company to step forward. Greg Mast, would you please join me? And I'll introduce Greg Mast, CEO of EarthTech.
Welcome, Mr. Mast.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, council members. For the record, my business mailing address is 5985 Rice Creek Parkway, Suite 100, Shoreview, Minnesota, 55126. Home address is 4237 24th Avenue South, Minneapolis, Minnesota, 55406.
Thank you.
I guess I'm here to address any questions that you have, which would be directed to the orderly annexation request that we've put in. I'm open to any questions that you may have regarding the operation that we are looking for in the proposed location.
You want to ask your question?
Yeah, what about the access, the road access to that property, where the trucks would be running? Where would that be?
Currently, right now, it's my understanding that we are working with the Planning and Development Commission as far as a site development plan. Right now, we have assessed the different possibilities of using the current access point to that property. It has also been put to my attention that we are also considering potential access from the bypass, which currently exists off of 71 and 23. However, I believe that the traffic coordinator for the city had recommended from his initial assessment that it would be in the point of access as it is today. But there is no final site plan as of right now.
Councilmember Dockin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for being here tonight. Are there other pelletizing plants like the one you're proposing to build in Minnesota?
We would be the first full-scale, large-scale manufacturing entity of this type in the country. And we have strategically located ourselves with the proposed location in Candiota County. And we have worked with Steve now for the pretty much a 2-year duration in trying to find the most suitable site here in the county, and also have looked at within the city of Willmar. To your point, there is not an existing facility of the scale that we are looking at developing here in Willmar. However, because of the close proximity to the commodity byproducts that we would like to use in our manufacturing process, we have strategically identified this location in this city and in this county as the right site for us.
How about in other states? Are there plants like this in other states?
No, there are not.
So this is the first in our country?
This will be the first large-scale biomass byproduct pelletizing plant.
What sort of allied businesses do you see growing up around your facility? I mean, what other business ventures would be allied with that, or would function or work with that?
I have engaged a member over at the technology campus and had discussed with him late last fall my intention for the site. And my understanding at that time was that the technology campus was looking to attract business technology companies which would be related to agricultural development. And that is something that I felt we could develop future synergies with, such as companies that will help us with our research and development initiatives, and also any other type of manufacturing, equipment manufacturing businesses, sales and marketing businesses that would be directly impacted by the promotion of agricultural biomass.
One of the concerns that I have, and I expressed it on open mic today, was that the citizens of our city approved a $8 million local option sales tax, and $7 million of that is going to be spent developing our new industrial park. And I see this as competition for developing this site, and then also developing that $7 million worth of infrastructure at our old airport. And I appreciate Mr. Rehnquist's saying that we're going to fill that, but we're still using $7 million of taxpayer dollars to build that site for a purpose like you're after. And so It's a challenge for me, I have to tell you that up front.
I can understand your position. Being from the metropolitan area and looking particularly in the state of Minnesota to locate our production facility, when I had first came to Willmar with my father and my mother to look at possible sites that would be usable for us and offered the key points that we'd be looking for with the idea of long-term sustainability and not just having an operation who 5 years from now or 10 years from now may not exist. We've went through comprehensive and very extensive due diligence in looking at this location, and I can understand from the development standpoint that the city has engaged themselves in, the factors that we've been looking for as far as the rail spur access and the availability or the possibility of putting in a turnout for this property. That is something that when we were looking starting 2 years ago, the industrial park did not have a site suitable for our operation. And that is something where we've looked at potential investment in other sites. However, at the same time, in once again, a strategic vision of long-term sustainability, we would be looking to have to locate a future site to meet the demand that we expect for this type of product. And we would rather have waited, been patient, and continued to source and locate the right site for this facility.
And then one last question. What about like noise or odors, anything? Can you tell us anything about those issues?
The preliminary design for the site is going to be a completely enclosed operation. And so we have employed other contractors that will be helping with the development and the layout of the site. And we have plans for implementing a air dust collection system that's very extensive and very state-of-the-art for an operation like this. And so because we have been trying to be very open to feedback as far as concerns within and related to the project, and therefore we have went the extra step in our minds of trying to accommodate our operation, any facility that will be completely enclosed. There is a emissions testing that is ongoing right now. However, I'd like to state that there is no expected result of any type of particulate emissions that will be any higher than a wood pellet production facility, of which wood pellets, I'm not sure how familiar you may be with the wood pellet operation, but wood pellets, when they are actually burned and combusted, it is actually not even EPA looked at by the EPA because it's the lowest solid fuel emissions that is in existence. And so the manufacturing of that, we have no expectation that there will be any types of EPA air quality issues.
Welcome to Willmar, and thanks for at least considering Willmar.
Thank you very much.
Other council members, any questions? Councilmember DeBleek?
This annexation is for 55 acres, more or less.
61 acres.
55.
Bruce clarified that.
Yeah. Okay, but how much of that property would this plant occupy?
My facility would be looking at occupying anywhere between 11 to 12 acres is what we'd be looking at. And my parents and other investors, which would be looking at purchasing the proposed site based on the annexation, would be looking at selling the remaining parcels of the proposed site to other parties.
All right, Mr. Mass, if you just be available. Thank you for your comments and for answering questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Should I?
Thank you, Steve. Just please wait. No, I mean, you can sit down, but wait. Don't walk out of the room. Other comments? Mike, come on up, please. Reverend Mike Carlson. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I was practicing not to say Borgs. I'm so used to saying that. I'm Mike Carlson, current board chair of the Willmar Public Schools School Board. My mailing address is 1115 Carolina Avenue. This evening, just want to share with you some questions that have been raised by members of our board over this proposed annexation. Primarily the concerns that we have about industrial growth so close to the largest senior high school in the county. Concerns of increased traffic, especially large vehicle traffic, that industrial growth would bring to that area. Concerns that at that location we have the largest number of new drivers who are using those same roads in that same location. Another concern that we would have is questions about industrial growth so close to not only the public school, but also a facility used by the city, the Civic Center, a facility that's used year-round, and is industrial use, a good use of the property that would surround these types of areas. As I was sitting here listening, I also thought about the joint venture that we do together every year of welcoming how many thousands of people to our community for the Sunshine Music Festival located on our grounds in the Civic Center grounds. And is an industrial park something that we want to have so close to that event that we're so proud of having? Members of our board, obviously, we are very supportive of economic development. We have partnered with you on numerous occasions, along with the county, on economic development issues. It's not a question for us of economic development. These questions that are raised by members of our board are really concerns about our young people. And as people elected to watch over our public schools, we felt it was important that we at least raise our concerns to you about what would be the development of this nature. We would certainly welcome this industry to Willmar, but we have to question if that location is the best use of the land. And is that a location that is best suited for industrial purposes in the future? I know that was part of the long-term strategic plan, but now with all the things that are happening out there, with a public school, a civic center, and other things, a bike trail, the head of the bike trail starting right there, maybe it's time to relook at that plan. And that's simply what we wanted to raise to you tonight, to share with you some of our questions and some of our concerns about that.
Thank you, Mike Holt. Any questions of Mike? All right, thank you, Mike, for your comments. Other members in the audience that wish to say something? Please come on up, Sid. Welcome, Sid.
Good evening, gentlemen. Excuse me. I guess my...
Sid, you have to introduce yourself and your address.
Oh, okay, I'm Sid Rhoda. I live at 1409 Northeast Lakeland Drive. And my concern is Lakeland Drive. The reason for that is now they just changed it, made it into a truck route. For years, I fought this with some of the council members, with the police department, the sheriff's department, to keep the trucks off of Lakeland Drive. Now they make it into a truck route. Well, here a while back, I went and talked to Rich Ronning, who is here tonight, and Rich Ronning told me that he lost a couple of cases in court because there wasn't specific markings for the road. The trucks didn't know where to go. But it didn't do any good to try and get more signs up there to get them to tell where to go. But now all of a sudden, when they make it into a truck route, they've got signs up that don't quit, marking the truck route and running down Lakeland Drive. And Lakeland Drive is already breaking up like you wouldn't believe. And the corner right in front of my house there has got a big hole in it where the trucks turn because it's not a big enough corner for these 53-foot semi-trailers to go around there. So they kind of go over the curb and bounce in that hole and make all kinds of noise. And I've got a list of some of the trucks that have been running here, which is yellow freight lines, which has never run there before. And West Central Sanitation, which got the noisiest trucks in 7 states as far as I'm concerned, because all them tanks are empty on there. And when they come around the corner and they hit all the seams in the road, it's boom, boom, bang, bang, and my windows shake and my house rattles and everything else. So I would kind of like to see go back to 15,000-pound gross weight. I know some of the guys that are building around there, which is Warren Erickson for one. He likes to get his trucks in and out of there. And there's a few other ones. And I've talked to a couple of the contractors, and they said that they're going to drive the street regardless of what it's posted at. Well, the only way to take care of that is pinch them in the back pocket. But I would really like to consider that, getting it back. And another thing that I would like to bring up, and then they were mentioned earlier tonight, is traffic. Do we need all them trucks coming around them corners with the school kids? It's a constant squeal of tires and a lot of noise, and I think it's dangerous for all these school kids to come and go when these semis are coming around there. They come from the north, and they go around that corner by the stop and go lights, they go down Lakeland Drive, and why would they go that way when they got to sit and wait for a train when they get down to the railroad tracks? But they got to turn, and a lot of them I've noticed they turn then, they go back on High Avenue to get back out on 71. So it's gotten to be kind of a bottleneck as far as I'm concerned. And besides that, who's going to pay for Lakeland Drive now when it's all busted up? I mean, it's going to go to the property owners. I feel that my house value has dropped considerably. I just sold one of my houses up there in the corner. And the owner that bought the house is here, and he's a little upset with me because I didn't tell him about all the traffic that was going around that corner. And I just kind of feel that they're tough to sell for that reason, is all the traffic there, because I've had several of them looking at his house that he bought now, and I had different people tell me, oh, they wouldn't buy that simply because of the noise in that corner and the traffic. And now we got Ag Tech coming over there, and that's got more traffic, and with the school and all that traffic, and Warren's addition down there, which isn't a whole lot of traffic once he's done, I'm sure, but we got all those trucks going in and out of there. And I'm just asking nicely if something couldn't be done to put that back to a 15,000-pound gross weight street. I would really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sid, for your comments. Anyone else wish to comment here or ask any questions? Please come on up.
Hello, Mayor and Council
Good
members.
evening.
My name is William Fry. I'm with the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway here in Fort Worth. Or, excuse me, used to be in Fort Worth, in Willmar. And my mailing address is 400 Pacific Avenue over here. And I'd just like to comment, there was some talk going about whether we have plans for abandonment or anything else for that spur line. At the present time, there are no plans for abandonment. We plan on keeping that track and hopefully with development. It is the only spur. I've been with Mr. Mast and gone around and looked at some other areas. It's the only place close that we can do any development at this time. And if anybody has any questions for me.
Just hold it. Any questions for Mr. Fry? Councilmember Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Fry, you just used the word plans for development. What type of plans? I mean, are you talking about, just the way it is, or actually the potential to expand that rail bed at some point in time?
We're open to any type of new businesses and any businesses that we can serve. At the present time, it's very expensive to put in new track anywhere. A new switch costs somewhere off of our present track anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000 just to install, because of our main line operations and such. So with the track already in existence and with the switch already in, it's the most economical spot at this time.
So it would not be likely that you would be looking to, make that any more than what it is now in terms of in terms of activity.
What is there is there.
What is there is there.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Fry.
Thank you.
Please don't leave yet. Anyone else in the audience that wishes to comment or ask any questions? I have a couple questions for staff, either for our city administrator or our city engineer. Somebody made the comment, I forgot now, is it possible to consider accessing that property with some kind of an exit off the bypass onto that property? Mel or anybody?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the short answer is no, that we would not recommend or endorse a direct access off of the bypass. You're right adjacent to an interchange, and all the accesses onto the bypass are grade separation. There's no at-grade access to any property along the bypass.
So it's not practical nor probable. All right. Any other comments from the council here? of questions of people who have, I'll bring it up to the council for general discussion, but anybody have any questions of the people who made any comments here? Councilmember Fagerly?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Either for Steve or for Bruce, this property would like to have city services, but if the city would deny this, they have the option to go to the township or the county and get the zoning changed with them.
That is correct, Councilmember Fagerly. The county has the property zoned agricultural and I believe by conditional use as well. This business would be reviewed and quite likely, I would speculate, approved by the county for the reasons that make it attractive to the developers, the same as if it was in the city of Willmar. They have requested, along with their request for annexation, city services. So to that extent, that is a more favorable situation for them, but would certainly be workable if it was not in the city.
So then if we deny it, they'd have to drill their own well or wells and septic systems then.
That's correct.
So, okay, thank you.
Warren, do you want to say something else?
Do I need to come back up?
Yes, you do.
Just a clarification on Mr. Peterson's statement there. My understanding from the Planning Commission minutes that I believe you each have in front of you or were sent to you, that the only thing supplied out there was water, that they're going to put their own septic in, so there would not be city sewer out there. Because my understanding, the cost to run services out to that property is quite expensive. And
Bruce, is Warren in the ballpark on that?
Mr. Erickson is correct that there is only city water available to the site. Initially, any use that would go on that property would have to be one that uses very little water and generates very little sewage in return, because it would have to be accommodated with an on-site treatment system, the same as if it was not in the city limits. It will take additional development in the area to justify the cost of bringing municipal sewer to that area.
And then just follow up on that, my understanding is that's one of the reasons the psychiatric hospital did not go out there, because of the cost of bringing improvements out there.
All right, thank you, Warren. Does anyone else from the audience wish to say anything or ask anything about this project? Because the next step is I'll close the public hearing and then it comes up to the council table for discussion and a vote. So if anybody else wants to say anything, now's the time to say it. Kelly, or did somebody from Terwilliger want to say something? Looks like you're grinding in your thoughts, sir.
Keith Nelson, 6483 Highway 71 South. I've been engaged by Mr. Mast and that firm for the last year and a half to help with the design of the 55-acre property there. Just a couple comments to speak to what Warren had said. I believe he mentioned that as the company looked at the site out in Atwater next to the Bush Mill, and we had explored that along with Mr. Rehnquist, and that was not a possible site available at that area. Also, I believe Mr. Dockin asked, or Mr. Fagerly asked about the dust issue on this. And in the biomass product, or in the manufacturing process, dust is profit. Every bit of dust that is generated has to go back into that pellet, because that is their profit. So this is the state-of-the-art technology that's being used within this facility to ensure there is no dust issues. So I hope I answer that one. And I believe that's all I need to say.
All right, thank you, Keith. Kathy Leadham, did you want to say anything?
I think Mr. Carlson spoke very eloquently on our behalf.
Thank you. Kathy's the school superintendent. Anyone else? Mr. Mast, did you want to say anything else?
I would just like to quickly address a few of the points that were brought up. Regarding the traffic situation as far as truck traffic and the freight issue, as long as my company is on the proposed site, I am also looking at leasing the rail spur that would be running approximately parallel with the current property. By doing so, I would be able to control the incoming traffic by coordination with Burlington Northern. I would also be able to control when and how the trucks would access the site, therefore being very sensitive to the issue regarding when there is high traffic in the mornings and in the afternoons for whether it's the kids going to the school, whether it's for events at the Civic Center Arena, whatever it may be. We're able to have control of that if I am currently the existing commercial entity in the site. Future development is obviously up for debate once we have to make that determination. However, for the annexation, which is at issue right now, and knowing what I know today, that is what we're able to control, and we're very open to ongoing discussion as to the best way to do that. And I would like to also remind the council that the site development that we have proposed for this property, there is a maximum capacity which can be developed as far as our initial site development plan. And therefore, the maximum amount of trucks that we would be looking for would be in the ballpark of 40 to 50 trucks per day. And again, that's not from the onset of production. That will take a year, 2 years, 3 years to get to. And so I think that what we're able to learn through the process and also with the coordination between different entities, I think needs to be taken into consideration. And so this is not something that we will be fully operational, 100% capacity from day one. And to that same point, that's where we will also be engaging Burlington Northern as to how we will be taking delivery for service from them. And day one, that won't be taking place. This is also something that maximum capacity will be anywhere between roughly 10 cars at maximum every few days, and again, not from day one. So we're looking at probably 1 to 2 cars per day at most once we're able to justify that means of freight. I don't know if there's any other questions regarding those issues.
I guess not.
One, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Bruce.
With the operations of the plant, hours of operations, would that be a 24/7 operation?
There is the ability to run the plant 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. However, we would like to get to that efficiency level. However, at the onset, we're looking at probably 6 days a week, but we would like to run the plant 24 hours a day. And I think in manufacturing, that obviously goes back to efficiency of process, and that's something that we have plans to do. And again, keeping maximum production in mind, at a future point in time, I think that we've set a ceiling for where we expect to be once we're fully efficient and at full capacity.
One last question. After the plant, if the plant is built, what's the employee base of that plant?
The employee base is projected to be, from the days the door opens, 11 to 15 employees, and potentially expanding based on production to 20 plus, 24 plus employees.
All right.
And that would be full-time in the actual site. That does not include any contracting for freight for the entities that will be looking for commodities, and also some miscellaneous items as far as what the production entails.
All right, thank you. Last call for comments or questions. Sid, is this something new?
I'd like to just ask if you, excuse me.
They may not answer you, Sid.
If all you people would like about 50-some trucks going by your house every day,
Okay, thank you.
with all the noise, thank you.
All right, I will now close the public hearing. At this point now, the discussion comes up to the City Council table, and members of the council can discuss this as they see fit. Councilmember Reese.
It's a difficult issue, and it's always, you can catch it from one side or the other as a city council member when you're looking at industrial or commercial development within the city, and it's controversial, but something that's going to generate tax dollars and be good for the city overall as far as income and dollars and tax and revenue. When you're looking at, well, first of all, we're really looking at, and Bruce qualified that at the beginning, we're looking at the annexation. This is not project specific, as he said, so I think we have to remove ourselves on that part. However, recognizing some of the issues that have been brought up and some of the concerns as far as it affecting possible residential development, schools, the civic center, and safety concerns. There's numerous concerns, and it's a big change for this area. But we are looking at annexation, and annexation that specifies a zoning for continued development in this area. Well, one of the concerns that I do have, even beyond those concerns that have been expressed, is the future, if this were to go, the future expansion of that area, and talking about the expense and extension of sanitary sewer, and I would guess maybe even would there need to be storm sewer and some of those other needs stubbed out into that same property. Eventually it's going to have to come, and if you're going to just utilize and I would guess that probably there isn't a lot of discharge. Is that right? Discharge that would be going, evidently if they're going to have a closed system for their sanitary sewer, there must not be a lot of discharge. It's just going to probably be some bathrooms, and that's probably it. Is that right?
My understanding is that it's simply domestic.
Okay. You know, we're looking at annexation, we're looking at zoning, and I don't know how to separate the project from it, Bruce. I have a hard time with that, but yet because of the additional expansion that they are considering, but then I look back at the railroad spur and the utilization of that. Yeah, I too, until tonight, and I had expressed that to Warren, had anticipated, had nothing to go on to make that anticipation, but the rail being taken up and the trail being expanded there. But if BNSF is not looking at doing that in any way, and that they see a value in that, that kind of changes that picture too. So I don't know. I have a lot of concerns and questions, but Mr. Mayor, I don't know where to go.
All right. Other council members? Councilmember Swenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't have so much of a traffic concern before, but after hearing the potential traffic flow in the future years, and also with further development, possible development, I missed that short answer, Mel. What is the reason that a bypass couldn't be considered? Exit, entrance and exit? Is it cost or MnDOT laws?
I believe the question was, could there be access directly to the bypass to this property? And I'd indicated no, there could not be, because the access along the bypass is all grade separation, in other words, interchanges, and this would be an unexpected use or an unexpected service to have an at-grade intersection onto a piece of property. So we would not endorse that type of use. Neither would, I don't believe, MnDOT.
So that's safety?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think traffic's going to be a concern there no matter what happens. If there's housing out there, there's going to be a possibility of anywhere from 80 to 100 homes could be built there. I don't think they would be. But we would have 2 cars per home, so we're going to have lots of traffic that way. or if it's light industrial, I don't think the traffic's going to be a problem. The roads out there are meant to have traffic. It's to bring people to Willmar. It's to get people to their jobs. And I think the siting is proper, and we're just dealing with annexation. So I'll make a motion that we approve the orderly annexation and execute the joint resolution to move this thing along.
Second.
There's a motion and a second before the council to approve the orderly annexation, which includes industrial zoning, and it's been seconded. Further comment about this? Councilmember Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if we're going to have a lot of extra traffic either way. The discussion again tonight is simply whether or not to annex. I suspect that through the site plan process and through the entire process that there will be plenty of opportunity to work with the developer and work with the Planning Commission to establish any necessary conditions that that the Planning Commission and the Council feel necessary. But that's, I believe, a discussion for another day. At least this way, annexing it in, then we have a say about how that gets used.
I have a question.
Councilmember Reese.
Is it safe for me to assume, Bruce, can you answer, or Steve answer, the traffic that would be going to whatever businesses would be over there? Is it a high percentage, I would assume, that would be coming off of the bypass rather than coming down Civic Center Drive from Business 7123?
I would suspect the bulk of all industrial traffic to this site would be off the bypass and would come off the nearby ramp. The use of Civic Center Drive would be primarily by employees in a typical situation. And I was speaking with the city engineer, and we're estimating just off the cuff that the amount of traffic increase they're talking about is probably in the neighborhood of 1% of the existing traffic on that high-speed route.
What, another question that's been, and I maybe should know this, but what kind of product are they bringing in?
They would be bringing in raw agricultural waste. The part of the corn stover, for example, could be used. Whatever biomass products are available to compress into pellets. It's not animal waste, it's all plant.
No, I understood that when you said that. So it could be grasses, it could be corn stubble.
I'm not 100% familiar with the technology, but I believe there are a variety of applications.
All right, we have a motion and a second before the council. Are there any other comments? Or if not, are you ready to vote on this? Any other comments? You ready to vote? It's a resolution. Roll call.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Swenson.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Dockin.
No.
Fagerly.
Aye.
DeBleek.
Aye.
6 ayes, 1 nay.
The resolution passes. The property will be annexed into the city of Willmar, and it will be rezoned industrial zoning. And the discussion will continue at a later point. Thank you to all the citizens who took time to be here tonight and made their comments and asked their questions. Thank you. You're welcome to stay. You're also welcome to leave if you wish. Next, we will go to number 8 on the agenda, which is the Willmar City Council Open Forum. And this is the opportunity for citizens to speak before the council and the mayor, to ask some, or to make some statements, or to ask some questions. I understand there's a list someplace of people who want to speak. I have a short list, but I think there are more than on the short list.
Is it floating around there?
All right, I will use my short list until the long list gets up here. Tonight, I have 4 individuals who've told me that they want to speak before the council. Maria Diaz is the first one. Maria, would you please come up and introduce yourself and tell us what's on your mind?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. My name is Maria Diaz, and I live on 2309 5th Avenue, Southeast in Willmar. I am a member of this community for 14 years, and I'm currently working as a community organizer for a project called Raices Project. And I'm here with you tonight to just let you know and express the feelings of a community that's been broken by the law. So I have some members of this community also will bring some concerns, but my personal focus will be on how about a month ago we got the results from an interview about 100 members of this community of the Latino descendants, and one of the things that was most brought up in that in those questioning is that how safe this community was for them, and how safe they felt living in this community, and how respected our culture was, and how welcome Willmar was to minority people. And that had changed since Tuesday morning. I had been involved, as all of you know, with the community, the Latino community, in trying to deal with this tough time for the Latino community. I'm here tonight just to let you know that we, the Latinos, believe in the law, and we also like to obey the law. My concern, our concern is when the law is being broken to put in effect some law. So our understanding is the immigration was here, just picking up a specific people with criminal records. And we're okay with that. That is the law, and when people break the law, we're for to obey the law and to pay the consequences. We all know that. What I cannot understand, and a lot of our members of this community cannot understand, when you have not broken the law and you are an American citizen and you are a resident of the United States, and immigration comes to your door and knocks really hard and then break a window and get in and then put handcuffs on you and then insult you and yell at you, and then after that ask you if you have any papers, any documents to identify yourself as a permanent resident or citizen, or what's your status in the United States. Not only that, but that scares everybody in the family. There were children in the home. There were pregnant women. And these people, immigration people, came to terrify our community. I have been, I'm sure you heard about from the media, just a little bit of it. But I got the whole picture, and it's really sad. And I want you all to hear that it breaks my heart that I don't feel safe anymore. And it's really sad to see that the chief of police admitted that they needed to provide some support. And they provided with a car and a police person to accompany immigration. When they knock on these people's doors, they said police. And the community members have always trusted our police. And they open the door. And then 8 people walk into their homes with a flashlight at 6 a.m. and a gun in their hands. It's pretty hard to believe that our police will go with them and support them. That's not how I thought about my local police. And it's really hard to understand that. So I just wanted to tell you that I got some comments from the community members where there was a raid that I didn't even know about it 3-4 years ago, when immigration came and arrested the same kind of individuals, undocumented people with criminal records. But they did it right. They knocked on the door. They showed their warrants. They asked permission to search the house. And they ask, do you know this person? We're looking for this person. We have an arrest warrant to take this person. They did it the right way. May I have your permission to see your home? And they did that. They didn't find, do you know this person? No, I don't. Do you know where they move? No, I don't. Thank you. And then they went on to the next one. So they know how to do it right. So it really bothered us that they did it wrong. And I want you to know, there are people, it's in a lot of pain. And I think the whole community is in a lot of pain because I've seen how this community have come together a long, long ways. And in the whole state, some of you have saw the news. We made it to national news because we were a good community. And I don't know if that will continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. I'll call on Charlie Loitzy next, and then I'll have the two other individuals. Charlie, you want to offer some comments?
Mayor and City Council members, my name is Idalia Lightsey, also known as Charlie Lightsey. I'm the director of the West Central Integration Collaborative, and that address happens to be 611 5th Street Southwest. Because of the nature of the topic, I'd rather not give my home address, but I certainly can give it to you off the record if that's necessary.
The office address is enough, thank you.
Okay. You heard Maria talk about the way that ICE or immigration folks, when they came and did the raids, and how we're not against abiding by the law, but we're against the process that was used. And therefore, I think this also then really gives us the chance then to take this further and hopefully hold a community forum. And we would like to do that. I think that would give us a chance to discuss this topic in length and to understand it better, because there's a lot of information in the community that people are passing on to each other, and it's not the correct information, such as if people are here undocumented, then obviously they should not be here, but believe me, every situation, it's so different. And that's and it's interesting that even though immigration is a federal issue, here we are affected by it. And so we cannot ignore it. As much as we would like to say, let's not talk about it, let's not do anything with it, because this is a federal thing, we must. They have left a mess. We have seen children crying, afraid of law enforcement now. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want that for my family. So I would ask you that. I know, Mayor, you and I talked earlier about possible resolutions that the City Council could take. There is a House File 771 right now at the Minnesota State, and it's calling for comprehensive immigration reform. I would urge you to read that and get familiar with that. And so I will leave you just with the thought that let's go ahead and have some kind of a community forum, and soon, if possible. I know that next week and the week after, we'll be meeting with other towns, such as Worthington, to talk about this and how it affected their town. And then, of course, we'll be talking about this Willmar, how they did it when they came to Willmar. And then the mayor and I are scheduled to attend a conference at the University of Minnesota. Well, actually, it'll be at the Neighborhood House in St. Paul to talk about diversity issues affecting rural Minnesota. I'll leave you with that.
Thank you, Charlie. Before you leave, do any council members want to ask Charlie anything or Maria anything? Not yet, okay. Then I'm going to call on Roberto Valdez. Roberto, could you introduce yourself and your position in the community?
My name is Roberto Valdez. Physical address 912 Olina Avenue. Mailing address P.O. Box 1452, Willmar, Minnesota. I work with the WAM project, and I know if we are launching our capital campaign, and if we were in our capital campaign, this would greatly be affected. We're working more with economic development as a way, as a venue for people to feel part of ownership of this community. It was amazing that a class that we're taking, I share with Steve at Ridgewater, they were focusing on the Somali population, and two of the ladies up there in the front were talking all great things about Willmar. And my question to them was, to one of them especially, was, do you call Willmar home? She had been here for 9 years. First thing that came out of her mouth is, my family is opening up a business downtown. That's what came out. Yes, I feel Willmar is my home. And that's what I'm working with. Right now, we updated a list of small business, per se, and it was interesting that there was 34 2 years ago. We went in there, we scratched out 7 of them, and we still ended up with 32. Out of those 32 businesses, 19 are Latino-owned business, and they have been impacted greatly by this that's just happening. I want us to, as a community, revisit the idea of small business, and even though they don't bring what a super center would bring in taxes or revenue, what the small business brings is a sense of home, and it brings it for a population of 20% that we make up here, and it is very important to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto. Roberto is the coordinator for the Willmar Area Multicultural Market. That's what WAM stands for. Next is Alejandro Solis. Alejandro?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, and all member community. My name is Alejandro Solis. I've been a member for the community for 3 years. I'm a manufacturing engineer for Genio, and I'm also a member of the Leadership Community Council for Races Project. My address is 7350 36th Street, Northeast. As part of the Races Project of the Leadership Council of the Races Project, I've been working, and as a community, we've been working hard with the Latino Hispanic community to make improvements within our own. And we've made a great deal of improvements in advance. One of the things, personally, I always felt support from the mayor and from the city council. And I came to this community straight from Mexico. I have had family and relatives come and visit me, and I have heard nothing but good comments about this community. As an all-American city, I believe that the cultural diversity of this community it's a fundamental approach to be an all-American city. What had happened over the last week is not just national news, it's international news. Family and friends have called me from Mexico asking me if anything of this is affecting me and the community, and it's made it across the border. What I ask to you is to help us support you and get into a win-win situation. And as we understand that the Department of Homeland Security has to do a job, if the local police, if it's going to help the Department of Homeland Security, we ask that as a community, we make sure that they do it in the right manners, and don't let something like what just happened affect the community as much as it has done. That's all I have to say. Thank you for hearing.
Thank you, Alejandro. Any council members wish to ask anything or make any comments here? Councilmember Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Something that I probably should have mentioned earlier, it came out of the open mic program today when a caller called in and alleged that the El Tapatio restaurant had to close and in fact had still been closed because of the ICE raids. And so I stopped there on my way back, and of course they were open. And I spoke with Juan Valencia and Dan Amor at the restaurant. They never did close. They're very much open for business, and I wanted to set that straight for the community because I think hearing that on the radio could have been potentially damaging for their business, and I'm sure most of us have been there at one time or another, and we wouldn't want that type of impact on our business, certainly. I appreciate hearing from everyone that this is a nation of laws and that we certainly want the law followed. And if there are people here with criminal records that shouldn't be here, yes, they need to be gone. And I've heard that consistently from the Latino community. They wholeheartedly agree with that. I believe that we are judged as a nation and a society based upon how we apply the law. If it was not done properly, by the book, fairly, then we failed not just the Latino community, but we failed ourselves as well. And I don't know personally of any of the circumstances of last week, but I do know, being at the meeting at St. Mary's last Thursday, and Chief Culsett was there as well, that you saw a room full of people in pain, scared, and I don't wish that on any member of our community. And we need, like Charlie says, we need to have a community discussion about how we value all our citizens. And I think that's a fabulous idea, and I think that's going to be one of the places where we really need to go next as a community in order for the healing that needs to happen to take place.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else? I'd like to just offer a couple comments. I had the opportunity to meet with Charlie and Maria this morning, and I've had many phone calls, not many, I think I've had about eight or nine phone calls over the weekend from various individuals in the community, and I've also read the blog statements on the West Central Tribune, which are very derogatory in nature. Our community is approximately 20% Hispanic, and we have somewhere in the range of about 4,500 Hispanic people in our community. We have somewhere in the range of about 1,000 to maybe 1,500 Somali people in our community, and we have 32 businesses that are Latino, or 19 out of 32 small businesses that are Latino in nature. This is a large part of our community that was greatly affected by the actions of a law enforcement program, the Immigration Customs Enforcement Office. And this is not the first time they've come into our community. They've come out here many times. Sometimes they come out and nobody knows that they're out here, and they're doing targeted searches. But apparently on this past week there were allegedly, from anecdotal reports, some fairly aggressive situations that have really startled and frightened the Hispanic community. They did arrest a number of individuals. It's nowhere near the 100 that was earlier quoted in the paper. I've been told it's much less than that, but they did make some arrests, They did come back, I think, 3 days to look for individuals, and they are doing their job. The question is the process in which they did it by how they entered some of the homes and apartments. Sometimes they knocked and were very professional. Sometimes I've been told they were very aggressive. And I've heard the reports that at times they were very aggressive. And that is very frightening to individuals. Can you imagine if somebody came to your door and was overly aggressive coming into your house, demanding information without a warrant or without a proper notification of why they're there, but just suddenly appearing inside your front door? That can be very, very alarming. So it is important to support the work that they do when it's done in a professional way, but also to confront it if it's not done professionally, and to seek appropriate answers to why there may have been some situations like that. So this discussion will be ongoing. There will be some public meeting. I think the leaders of the Latino community are trying to figure out when the best way it is to organize that, and they will keep us informed, and the public will be invited. It is a complicated issue, but I've heard loud and clear from these leaders and that they do support the law enforcement procedures. They just want them done on a professional basis. They want them done on a professional basis, the way all law enforcement procedures ought to be conducted. So thank you for your comments tonight, and I look forward to hearing from you in the future. Maria, did you want to say something else? Come back to the microphone.
I would like to make a couple of corrections. Number one is that they were here for 4 days,
all right.
Tuesday through Friday, according to the community reports. And also the number that the press got out of me when I said, because they wanted to know numbers right away. And my answer was, based on the phone calls that I'm getting from the community, my estimation is between 80 to 100 people that either cannot be found, or they left town without telling anybody, or they've been taken. So it was never said, and immigration said that it's all lies, that I said, or someone in the community says that 100 or more. When the press is just asking, well, just give us an estimation. When the community calls, and all I hear is a voice saying they were knocking on my neighbor's door and they took 5 people. I don't know names, I don't know address, I just write down 5. And that's how I kept track of my numbers. So the 80 to 100 numbers that I gave was based on the reports from the community. Luckily they had a number to contact. My phone was busy every minute since Tuesday morning, 6 a.m. up until today, still ringing. I have to turn it off, but so I got my information from the community, from the families. I had been lucky enough to be in contact with most of the Latino families in town, working in the past with the Willmar public schools, and I've been at the schools, so I had direct contact with the families. And the ones who could not get a hold of me on my cell phone because I was using it, they would call me at home. So that's where the information is coming from. When it doesn't match with the immigration, that's the reason why, because I did not have names, and it's just an estimation of the community reporting back. And as of last night, I told them, if you hear about people coming back, or if they call you back, there was a person who was taken by immigration, did not have any money to make the phone call to a friend, and he had to tell somebody else, when you call your home, you have this phone number to a friend of mine to let him know that I'm here. So this person then calls me back and said, my friend is over there. He was taken. But since Tuesday that he was reported gone, we didn't know. And then I got 3 notifications of families that moved away. They left Willmar completely. The whole family just packed and go in a matter of hours. So 3 families have left, as far as I know. So those are numbers that I was counting because I didn't know, and in a moment of crisis and when people want numbers. So I just want to make that clear for the record.
Thank you, Maria. All right, anyone else from the audience wish to make any comments before the City Council tonight on the open forum? If not, again, thank you for coming before us and speaking your issues.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Dockin.
Thank you all for coming and sharing your side of the allegations. And I'd like to ask our city attorney, what is the procedure that these individuals would need to follow, and how do we hear back from the ICE officials?
Other than contact federal representatives, that would be my only suggestion. We obviously have no control over what the federal officials do when they come to town, so there isn't a whole lot we can directly do.
So it would be Representative Colin Peterson and Senators Klobuchar and Coleman?
That's what I would do.
That would be the recourse for these folks?
That's where I would send my complaint.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. We will go on then in our agenda. Oh, Maria?
Just a response to that.
All right.
Currently, the Centro Legal, led by
Keller.
Contreras.
Gloria
Contreras. Currently is putting together, as we speak, but today was filed, temporary order of protection, and that will be effective, or try to be effective for the city of Willmar, based on the fact that immigration broke the law and did not act properly. And there were some affidavits taken from the witness that they went through this experience. So there is something that Central Legal is already helping us put together to address those issues.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for that information. Next on the agenda then is number 9, and that is the Public Works Safety Committee report of April 10th. Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First item on the agenda was the fact that bids were opened in January for the Waterview Business Park projects, and on April 10th for Project 0701, the annual street improvements. And it was previously decided to hold the assessment hearings for both of these projects at the same time. And I would then, Mr. Mayor, introduce a resolution calling for the assessment hearing to be held at 7:03 p.m. on May 7th, 2007.
Second. We have a motion and a second for a resolution to have an assessment hearing on May 7th at the council meeting here. Comment? Roll call?
Councilmember Christensen.
Aye.
Swenson.
Aye.
Dockin.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
DeBleek.
Aye.
Reese.
Aye.
6 ayes, 0 nays.
The resolution passes.
The next item was the Waterview Business Development, which consists of 6 projects, and 5 of these are related to the developer's agreement with Dunnick Brothers. The 6th is the phase of the interceptor for the relocation of the wastewater treatment facility. The budgets have been revised to reflect the bid amounts and funding sources for each project. So, Mr. Mayor, we have a number of resolutions here adopting budgets. However, the Public Works Director talked to me earlier tonight in regards to the signal system and the Waterview paving improvements. The bids on the, if I understand this right, Waterview paving improvements were $200,000 less than the estimate. And we have a request from the developer to move the signal system, $121,000 of that, into the paving improvements. Is that correct? So that would eliminate one of the resolutions?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we would still keep the budgets, but the budget for the signal system showed their participation as being in cash, and they wanted us to consider, and staff concurs, that with the bids coming in favorable, to move the cash amount into the assessed amount, or to be included with the bond, because we would have adequate financing with the bonds. So we would still keep the same number of budgets, but we would just show it as being bond versus cash.
Okay, so Do I have to make a motion to make that change?
I think we'll just take care of it internally than what you've got on item number 4.
So we'll still adopt each resolution, all 5 resolutions as developed?
And only the 4th one is amended a little bit.
All right. Mr. Mayor, first I would introduce the resolution for the Waterview Underground Utilities Project 0603.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the budget for project number 0603, Waterview Underground Utilities. Further comment? Roll call.
Councilmember Swenson.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Dockin.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
DeBleek.
Aye.
Reese.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes.
Then I would introduce the Waterview Paving Improvements Project 0703. Now that doesn't need a modification, Kevin? All right.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for a resolution to approve the budget for project 0703, Waterview Paving Improvements. Comment? Roll call.
Councilmember Gardner.
Aye.
Dockin.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
DeBleek.
Aye.
Reese.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Swenson.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes.
Then I'd introduce a resolution for project 0704, which is the 19th Avenue Southeast paving improvements.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for a resolution to approve the budget for project 0704, which are the 19th Avenue Southeast paving improvements. Comment? Roll call.
Councilmember Dockin.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
DeBleek.
Aye.
Reese.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Swenson.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes.
Then I would introduce a resolution for project 0705 budget, signal system 19th Avenue and 5th Street Southeast with modifications.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for a resolution to approve the budget for project 0705, which includes the signal system for 19th Avenue and 5th Street Southeast. Comment. Roll call.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Aye.
DeBleek.
Aye.
Reese.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Swenson.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Dockin.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes.
Then I would introduce a resolution for the budget for project 0706, and that's the Waterview Street Lighting Project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for a resolution for the budget for project 0706, which includes the Waterview Street Lighting Project. Comment? Roll call.
Councilmember DeBleek.
Aye.
Reese.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Swenson.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Dockin.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes.
The next item on the agenda, Mr. Mayor, was a request to appropriate $20,000 from the 2004 capital outlay funds into the 2007 budget for the purchase of radio system upgrades. The current system for the city is a 1960s base radio with a wideband radio frequency, and the municipal utilities has already made the change, a similar upgrade, and in order for us to be able to communicate with them, this change is needed, and also to comply with 2013 FCC narrowband mandates, changes to the system need to be made. So, Mr. Mayor, I would introduce a resolution to approve the request to reappropriate $20,000 from the 2004 capital outlay funds to the 2007 capital outlay program.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for a resolution to reappropriate $20,000 from the 2004 capital outlay funds into the 2007 capital outlay program. Comment. Roll call.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Swenson.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Dockin.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
DeBleek.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes.
And the next item, Mr. Mayor, was the wastewater treatment plant relocation project monthly report, which we received from Craig Holmes of Donahue and Associates. He updated the committee on the activities took place in March, and the conveyance improvements also, and the 30% design of the plan is now complete, and design efforts will resume in July. The design of Phase 2 of the Southern Interceptor is nearly complete, and that includes 1,900 feet of pipe from the 19th Avenue southeast north to the existing wastewater treatment plant, and that would be constructed ahead of the roadway construction. And I believe that's just for information only, Mr. Mayor. The fifth item was Project 0703. 7 bids were received, and this was for interim improvements to our existing wastewater treatment plant, and that will allow the plant to remain in operation until the new facility is completed. The low bid was from Schenck Constructors Incorporated out of Brooklyn Park, and their bid was in the amount of $148,100. The estimate was for $170,000, and Mr. Holmes indicated to us that it was Donahue & Associates' recommendation to accept the low bid. So, Mr. Mayor, I would introduce the resolution to award the project 0713 to Schenck Constructors in the amount of $148,100 and authorize the mayor and city administrator to enter into an agreement on behalf of the city.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for a resolution to award Project 0713 to Schenck Constructors Incorporated of Brooklyn Park in the amount of $148,100. Further comment? Roll call.
Councilmember Christensen.
Aye.
Swenson.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Dockin.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
DeBleek.
Aye.
Reese.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes.
Next item was we had 2 citizens at our meeting with some concerns. Ron and Nancy Snyder were there, and their concerns was for the design and the lighting of the roadway at the north end of 25th Street Southeast, where it intersects with Highway 12. Staff explained the reason for the present design, which allows alignment with the road to the north, and they also explained that an adjacent access point is temporary, and staff will be reevaluating the lighting in these areas. The 7th item was the fact that the committee was notified by staff of an approval of a grant from the Department of Homeland Security, which was applied for last summer. The grant will provide the city with a single tube night vision equipment valued at $3,000, and staff is requesting permission to accept the grant. So, Mr. Mayor, I would introduce a resolution that we accept the grant from Homeland Security for night vision equipment as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for a resolution to accept a grant of $3,000 from Homeland Security for night vision equipment. Further comment? This is for the police department, Mick?
Yes.
Is that where it's going to end up? All right. Any other comment? Roll call then.
Councilmember Swenson.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Dockin.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
DeBleek.
Aye.
Reese.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes.
The council recall at our last strategic planning session, we discussed the possibility of conducting a city facility space needs assessment. Staff has since obtained a professional service proposal to address this issue. And the firm of Hay Dobbs submitted a proposal that staff reviewed with the committee and also is recommending to accept the proposal, starting with a baseline proposal of $8,900 plus reimbursables. And for the council's information, the buildings that have been identified for the 20-year analysis would be the city office building, the council chambers, fire station / substation, public works garage, and the senior community center. I would introduce the resolution, Mr. Mayor, to authorize yourself and city administrator to enter into an agreement with Hay Dobbs to conduct the baseline needs analysis for the buildings recommended by staff for the fee of $8,900 plus reimbursables.
Second.
There's a motion and a second for a resolution to enter into an agreement with Hay Dobbs for a baseline needs analysis for buildings for the fee of $8,900 plus reimbursables. Further comment about this? Councilmember Dock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I sat in for Councilmember Fagerly. I did not support this in the Public Works Safety Committee. I don't support it tonight. It's hard for me to believe that out of 14 different priority items that this one comes to the top. And I think we need to, as a council, sit down and discuss all 14 of them and then decide which one is number one. And so I certainly don't support this.
Further comment? Councilmember Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that this was one of the items that we discussed and prioritized at our retreat.
Yes, it was.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Swenson.
You know, I'm having a hard time recalling it being number one. I remember discussing retirement needs, assessing the needs of staff as they are coming up for retirement, but I don't remember it being so high for facility needs.
Mick, do you want to comment?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm not sure where the number one is coming from. There were 5 higher priority items identified by the council and 9 lower priority items. Now, these were listed in our response to the council when we were establishing our action plans, but I don't know that we were suggesting that they were in any particular order. I think if you go through each of the higher priority goals and the lower, you will find that there are time frames associated with each one and that nothing was arbitrarily moved to the top of a list. Many of them we work on concurrently.
Other comments? Councilmember Gardner.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. If we were to have assigned a number to any of these, the task force, the housing task force certainly would have been the highest priority, but I believe that we set a number of different priority goals for this council to act upon. It should come to nobody's surprise that this is on that list, and I don't see a problem with looking forward, as we have done with other facilities, like our wastewater treatment plant, looking forward to future needs. This is a good starting point.
Anyone else? This is one of the 5 top priorities, Mick, that the council approved of at the council retreat.
One of 5.
One of the 5. What are the other 4?
Well, the one was to complete the needs analysis for various city facilities, complete the wastewater treatment plant, which we've been working on for a number of years, build quiet zone crossings and a railroad loop west of Willmar, complete the first phase of the industrial park and initiate planning for subsequent phases, and appoint the task force for the housing standards review. So we're essentially working on all of them.
At the same time, basically. Yeah. All right. All right. There's a motion and a second. Are you ready to vote on this? This is a simple motion. No, it's a resolution.
No, it's a resolution, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Roll call.
Councilmember Gardner.
Aye.
Dockin.
No.
Fagerly.
No.
DeBleek.
Aye.
Reese.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Swenson.
No.
4 ayes, 3 nays.
The resolution passes.
All right, Mr. Mayor, the next item is in regards to the wastewater treatment plant, and we are at the point now that the relocation project where we need to gain access to property for surveys and soil borings and establishing a construction corridor for the interceptor line. And the city attorney, in discussing, staff discussing it with the city attorney and also with the League of Minnesota Cities, the city was given names of a number of attorneys to contact. The firm of Kennedy and Graven was chosen to submit a proposal. City staff reviewed the proposal, and they are recommending to enter into an agreement with Kennedy and Graven to provide legal services for the wastewater treatment plant relocation project. Therefore, Mr. Mayor, I would introduce a resolution to authorize the mayor and city administrator to enter into an agreement with Kennedy and Graven for legal services to secure the necessary right-of-way for the wastewater treatment plant relocation project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for a resolution for the city to enter into an agreement with Kennedy and Graven for legal services to secure the necessary right-of-way for the wastewater treatment plant relocation project. Further comment, Councilmember Reese.
I just have a question. I mean, I made introduce the resolution, but it says right-of-way. Is that the correct statement?
Would it be?
Well, we could be looking for easement, we could be looking for purchase, we could be looking for...
Yeah, I think I mentioned at the committee meeting that we weren't ruling out the possibility of either easement or outright acquisition of land.
All right.
Councilmember Christensen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just curious as to, did the city or staff answer Mr. Quam's questions or the ones that he said he had asked in his letter to the editor? Has anything been done with that?
With regard to his letter to the editor, I've not seen that, so I can't answer that question. But he apparently made reference to a letter that we had received some time ago, and I can only assume that was the letter from his attorney, which was dated in mid-April. One of the things that Mr. Quam was looking for was some history from Donahue and Associates of projects that they've done previously that involve these large underground utility lines. And we told him that we would get him that information as soon as we can. And we're working on that. We're responding to that. But I would point out that nevertheless, as recently as a week ago, I had asked Mr. Quam if he would reconsider and allow us to go onto his property and do the necessary surveying and soil boring so that we could establish a corridor and then talk a little more specifically about the proposed route. And he responded by saying no, he wasn't going to give us that access. And we're talking about, I believe it was 8 shots that would be required for surveying and then soil borings every 800 feet or so along the route. And we wanted to get in there and have all of that work done and out of the way prior to the crop season that's coming up very quickly. Mm-hmm. Without having the ability to gain that access, we are talking about hiring an attorney to help us do that.
I know he was interested in talking to landowners around projects like these, and I guess I'd just say get him to him as soon as we can. I mean, he does have some concerns, and he wants to hear what they said.
We're working on that. We'll get him that information.
Any other comments about this resolution? I just have a question for either Mick or Rich. Have we worked with Kennedy and Graven in the past? Is this a law firm that is connected? You know, have we done any business with these guys?
I have a relationship with Holmes and Graven. Holmes is no longer associated with the firm. It's now Kennedy and Graven. They did work for us when the Housing and Redevelopment Authority was actively involved in redevelopment activity. They come highly recommended by the League of Minnesota Cities for this type of work, and Rich has met with them personally.
Rich, do you have any comment? Is it, I mean, this could be a testy kind of situation for quite a while. Is this a firm that you have confidence in? And
Very definitely. They're well-respected statewide.
okay. All right. Any other questions? This would be a roll call then.
Councilmember Dockin?
Aye.
Fagerly?
Aye.
DeBleek?
Aye.
Reese?
Aye.
Christensen?
No.
Swenson?
Aye.
Gardner?
Aye.
6 ayes, 1 nay.
That resolution passes.
That's the last item on the, in the minutes from the Public Works, Public Safety, Mr. Mayor, and I will move to file the minutes unless there's additional questions.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to file the minutes. Councilmember Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Craig, one brief question, if I may. Referencing back to item number 4, I understand that that goes across to the north on 19th Avenue. There's another section of this project that will be coming up at some point in time that actually comes down 28th and crosses 1st Street, and I'm wondering about a timeline on that.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, the project that will begin construction about a year from now is in fact that project that will continue from a point roughly in front of Home Depot, proceed westward across 1st Street, west on 28th Avenue, 30th Avenue, and then straight west along the section line to crossing 30th Street, crossing County Road 5, and ending at County Road 116 at the brush site. That construction is scheduled to start approximately a year from now and be completed about 20 months thereafter.
Okay, thank you.
Those in favor of filing the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next are the Community Development Report minutes for April 12th, 2007. Councilmember DeBleek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First item on the committee's agenda is a discussion of some pending annexation. The first annexation was an orderly annexation proposed for the property by Civic Center Drive. This was discussed by the committee. This is the same issue that we discussed earlier in the meeting, Mr. Mayor. Second annexation discussed by the committee was an annexation that is proposed for to be approved by an ordinance, and the property being considered to be annexed as a 5-acre tract west of North 1st Street, and is being proposed for senior housing. The annexation would be by ordinance, which would require a 30-day review period before a public hearing, and I believe that issue is also later in our agenda. The second item the committee discussed was the proposal presented by Radio Controls Limited to conduct a quiet zone evaluation for railroad crossings within the city of Willmar. The proposal is consistent with the council's goals in establishing quiet zones. After discussion, it was a recommendation of the committee that we approve the agreement with Railroad Controls Limited and authorize the city administrator to execute the agreement in the amount of $3,632. And I'll introduce that. That would be a resolution, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for a resolution to approve an agreement with Railroad Controls Limited to help study this quiet zone evaluation in the amount of $3,632. Further comment? Roll call.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Aye.
DeBleek.
Aye.
Reese.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Swenson.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Dockin.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes.
Okay, third item on their agenda was environmental assessment worksheet. It was presented by staff a proposal from Mid-Minnesota Development Commission to provide an environmental review assessment for redevelopment of the former airport property. The environmental review is required under state law to the amount of property that is being converted from one use to another. The environmental review is also necessary to complete state and federal grant process. After discussion by the committee, there was a motion made and second to adopt the resolution with Mid-Minnesota Development Commission and allow the city administrator to execute the agreement for a not-to-exceed amount of $3,500. And I'll introduce that resolution, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for a resolution that approves an agreement with Mid-Minnesota Development Commission for an environmental assessment worksheet. The amount is $3,500, not to exceed that amount. Further comment? Roll call.
Councilmember DeBleek.
Aye.
Reese.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Tarkin.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes.
The fourth item on our agenda was discussion of a land exchange. It was presented by staff that the city grant property to Harlan Roner in exchange for land the county needs to construct County State Aid Highway 47. The county requires the westerly portion of the Roner property located on West Highway 12 to be used for right-of-way for the extension of County Road 47. It is proposed that because the city is providing the balance of the right-of-way for the County Road 47 extension, the city also grant Mr. Roney a like-size piece of property on the east side of his site. After discussion, the committee approved the adoption of a resolution approving the agreement, granting the land exchange, and authorizing the mayor and the city administrator to execute the agreement. And I'll introduce that resolution, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for a resolution approving the agreement granting the land exchange and then to execute that agreement. Doug, are you here on this issue? Okay. Are you here on this issue?
I'm here on number 12.
Okay, we'll get to it. All right, any comment about this Roner piece of property? All right, roll call then.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Christensen.
Abstain.
Swenson.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Tarkin.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
DeBleek.
Aye.
6 ayes, 0 nays, 1 abstention.
That resolution passes.
The fifth item on the agenda was the committee discussed status of buildings remaining at the former airport. Staff was looking for direction for the sale or disposal of such buildings. After considerable discussion, there was a motion made that staff pursue the sale or demolish of buildings, and further that none of the buildings are to be located within the city unless they are brought up to current codes and rehabilitated to city-approved standards. And I'll introduce that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second that we direct staff to pursue the demolition or sale of the remaining buildings at the airport. Further comment about that? Bruce?
Mayor, that I don't believe that includes all the buildings at the airport. There's a number out there that are not included with that. It's just
Bruce, do you want to
certain
comment?
buildings.
Mayor Heike, members of the council, the buildings that staff would be looking to dispose of would be all of those except for the former main terminal and the smaller masonry hangar next to it. It would include all of the galvanized structures and the, I think it's the EA building out to the west that's the former portable school building that the city moved on the site some years ago. So I think there's 5 total structures that we would be looking to remove.
All right, any other comments? Those in favor of this motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Sixth item on our agenda was discussion on Block 47. The committee discussed an option request by Beverly Doherty and successors and assigned for the city-owned property on the east half of Block 47. This site is currently used by Rice Hospital for parking. The committee discussed hospital parking needs and the procedure that would be followed to redevelop the site in the future. It was noted that the council had rejected a higher offer for this property in the past, and the current offer of $500,000 was deemed to be too low. After discussion, the committee passed a motion to recommend that the city not grant an option for the property at the current time, and for the following reasons: that Rice Hospital is not ready to proceed with the vacating of the site, and that the price offered in the opinion of the committee was too low. And I'll introduce the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second. We have a motion and a second to deny a request for an option on the property on East Block 47 because the hospital is not ready to vacate the site and the price offered was considered to be too low. Further comment? Those in favor of that motion say aye.
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 Opposed? That carries.
Item number 7, business subsidy policy. Staff explained to the committee that the wage floor in the current business subsidy policy was $10 per hour. This wage was set to be 110% of the federal poverty wage for a family of 4 at the time the policy was adopted in 2004. Staff was recommending that the wage floor be adjusted to a $10.90 per hour to reflect the change in the federal guidelines. After discussion of the committee, there was a motion made that the wage floor in the City of Willmar business subsidy policy be increased to $11 per hour. And I'll introduce that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to look at the business subsidy policy, the hourly rate, making it $11 per hour instead of $10 per hour. Comment about that?
Just a simple question.
Go ahead.
Why 11 instead of 10.90?
Just rounding of numbers. And
that doesn't affect it in any way?
Mayor Heidke, Councilmember Reese, the requirements are that it cannot be less than 110% of the federal guideline. It can be greater than that.
All right.
This is the wage. If a business wants some kind of a subsidy from the city, they have to guarantee that wage on average or for all employees?
For all employees during the term of the subsidy.
For all employees?
Correct.
All right. Further comment about that? This is a motion. Those in favor of this motion say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried.
Item number 8, annexation notices was brought up by one of the committee members to recommend to the committee that the city try to find a way to provide notices to nearby landowners for all annexations, not just those annexations where notification is duplicated or dictated by state statute. Staff indicated that it would be a substantial amount of staff time and expense involved to do this, but agreed to look into the matter of the council. After discussion, the committee passed a motion to direct staff to research the issue of providing notice to property owners for all annexation requests. I'll introduce that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to direct staff to research the issue of providing notice to property owners for all annexation requests. Comment?
Question.
Councilmember Reese.
How far or how are you determining who's receiving notice?
I think that has to do with our current annexation policy. That would be a certain distance around an annexed property.
Bruce, do you want to comment?
Under the terms of state statute and the rules for annexations, on an orderly annexation, the municipality is required to only publish notice of a public meeting of its intent to adopt the joint resolution. In the case of an annexation by ordinance, the council is required, or the city is required, to provide 30 days mailed notice to adjacent landowners. So I guess what I was going to do as staff was to look into what other communities are doing and then bring a recommendation back to the council as to what we could do differently to make sure that the message does get out, and at that time it would be up to the council to determine what a suitable distance was. Because when we're talking about annexations, we're dealing with fringe areas. It may be better to go out further than we typically would for the public notices that we mail out for, say, a zoning amendment, a conditional use permit, whatever, which by statute is 350 feet. When you get out in the unincorporated areas, 350 feet may not hit very many people. So at a minimum, we need to hit the adjacent property owners and perhaps look at a second tier of property owners as well.
You'll come back with recommendations.
That's my intent, yes.
All right. Any other comment about this? Those in favor of this motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Motion to file the minutes.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to file these minutes. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I'm going to jump to number 12 on the agenda. We've got a couple gentlemen who are very patient here, and then we'll come back to number 11. Number 12, consideration of an annexation petition, John and Catherine Duval. Bruce, would you explain that, please?
Mayor Heike, members of the council, the city received an annexation petition from John and Catherine Duval for a 5.33 acre tract of land that they own along North 1st Street. The request was reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission on their April 11th, 2007 meeting. Staff recommends that the council take two types of action this evening. The first action would be to adopt a resolution that simply verifies the ownership of the tract being proposed for annexation. And the second action would be to introduce the annexation ordinance for a hearing at the May 21st, 2007 council meeting, which will provide adequate time for staff to make the 30-day notice.
Thank you, Bruce. We have in the audience a couple of people who are tied into this. Do either of you wish to make a comment about this? Doug or...
My name is John Schnobreck. I'm an attorney in Redwood Falls. My address is 315 South Washington. I represent Welcome to Our Home, LLC, who has signed a contingent purchase agreement with the Duvals with the intent to put up 50 units of assisted living and 22 units of memory loss on that site. Obviously, we're not talking about the site-specific things here at the annexation, but that's what I'm here for, is to find out what you're going to do and when you're setting the hearing, and that was my only purpose to be here, other than to announce that.
All right. Thank you, John. So if I understand, these are, you said it'll be a new structure. Is it all one building? You said 50 units plus 22 units? Is it one structure, or is it cottages, or?
No, it'd be one structure. I have this drawing. I have a bigger one here in case you want to see. But the building could be separated. The long, slender, what looks like an apartment building is the assisted living, and then the bigger rectangle here is the memory loss. The memory loss unit is a fixed facility. It's a closed facility, obviously, and so it is separated with appropriate security devices, etc., from the other part of the building. The design that I just showed you has not been approved by any means. We have to do soil testing. There is directly to the north of that some wetlands, and so I'm working with soil and water to get the proper setbacks. But to the extent that we'd have to split the two units, they would be probably connected with a walkway. But otherwise, if all things go as we expect, it probably would be one building.
All right. Is there a timeline on this, when they would like to begin this?
We would like to go with a concurrent conditional use request, which would allow us to start construction in the early summer.
Of this year?
Of this year.
All right.
Yes, my clients have been looking around the area for more than a year and a half to try and find a location for this project.
Thank you for the information. Council?
Did anybody introduce the resolution?
No, nobody has done anything.
Mr. Mayor, I would introduce the resolution verifying ownership.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for a resolution that verifies ownership of this property. Comment? Councilmember Christensen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Why do we have to verify ownership? What's the...
Bruce?
What's the deal?
Can you help us on that?
This is something that the council began doing, I would say, in the late 80s, early 90s, though that dates myself. The fact I recall that, which keeps me safe for now out of one of Mr. Schnobrick's units. We had one issue come up one time where someone had certified that all of the property owners had petitioned for annexation, and because there's a, when they complete the annexation petition, they have to state if they are some of the majority of, or all of the property owners of the property. And there was a discrepancy that came up at the last minute that impacted the timing of the annexation. So since that time, we've just added one more step of due diligence of researching to make sure that the people that signed the petition do in fact own the property.
And in this case, there's just the one owner.
That is correct.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other comments about that motion? This is a resolution. Roll call.
Councilmember Christensen.
Aye.
Swenson.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Tarkin.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
DeBleek.
Aye.
Reese.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes.
Mr. Mayor, I would introduce the ordinance for a hearing for May 21st, 2007.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for a public hearing on May 21st, 2007 for an ordinance for this project. Comment. Councilmember Dockin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bruce, could you tell me what's going to happen at this hearing on May 21st?
Well, simply put, the purpose of the hearing on May 21st will be for the council to take testimony for the public, from the public, regarding the request or the petition to annex the property. The annexation issue that will be under consideration on May 21st will be separate from the land use proposal for the site. The council needs to determine first if it's suitable for annexation.
So are we talking about use at this meeting?
As difficult as it is to separate the two, the purpose of the meeting or the purpose of the public hearing is to discuss the annexation, whether or not the property should be in the city limits.
How does one separate annexation from use?
In considering an annexation, I think it's incumbent upon the council to look at the type of zoning that's requested in the annexation request, and in making their decision on the annexation request, determine if the general scope of uses that are listed in that particular zoning district would be acceptable at the location as being proposed for annexation. You can, I understand it's difficult to not focus on a proposed use because the mind has a tendency to drift that direction once you know what use is proposed for the site. But I think you have to look at the broader scope of uses that are allowed in that R2 district.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Mayor, I have a question, and that is, we would like to, and I've discussed with you, Bruce, to do a concurrent conditional use application. And assuming that that application would be made in the next couple of days, can you outline for the council members what would be the likely timing process with regard to that in the ordinary course?
Go ahead, Bruce.
Mayor Heike, members of the council, the proposal to do this, to do the land use review concurrent with the annexation request runs slightly counter to what I just said. But the city has in the past, in the case of an annexation where there is an imminent request to develop property, allowed staff to pursue or to proceed with the zoning review or the individual site plan review, and to have any approvals be conditioned upon final annexation, so that there's not, so that the annexation itself does not slow the process down. Again, the council has to be comfortable with this process, and if the council doesn't feel that concurrency is a route to go here, staff would not take that route. But we also have to seek approval from Willmar Township and from the county that they would be comfortable in allowing us to conduct that land use review as well, given the fact that the jurisdiction has not shifted formally.
All right. Any other comments here? Okay, we have a motion, and it's been seconded for this hearing on May 21st. Is this a simple motion, Kevin? Those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. May 21st. Now we'll go back to number 11 on the agenda, which is the consideration of a resolution authorizing the receipt of bonding bill funds for Rice Memorial Hospital's dental clinic project. Mick?
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, in your packet is a resolution that was adopted recently by Rice Memorial Hospital accepting the $500,000 grant from the state bonding bill last year. As the legal entity, the city of Willmar is required to do so as well. The city would be the recipient of those funds, and we'd simply send them on to Rice. The hospital, in working in a partnership with the University of Minnesota School of Dentistry, has raised in the neighborhood of $2.5 million to establish a dental training clinic within the confines of Rice. This $500,000 represents a portion of that $2.5 million fundraising effort, and they are in the process of remodeling a portion of the hospital to accommodate the training facility and hiring an individual to oversee the work of the students that would be assigned out to Rice as part of their coursework. So the hospital has asked that the city council consider adopting the resolution that you find enclosed in your packet.
Thank you, Mick. Council? Councilmember Dockett?
Are we taking comment or just...
Well, both. If you want to make a comment, go ahead.
I'd like to make a comment. At the last Rice Hospital Board, they were very favorable with this dental clinic coming to our city because it will serve an underserved population within our region. So it's a real asset for the hospital and our community.
Thank you, Jim.
Introduce the resolution, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the resolution accepting $500,000 grant from the 2006 state bonding bill for the new dental clinic at Rice Hospital. Further comment? I would just add to what Jim said that not only is it serving an needed population, but it's also could be a good recruiting tool to bring dentists into this community. I'm not exactly sure, but I was told that we have about 10 or 11 dentists in Willmar, and the median age is somewhere in the about 50. So we have a problem with our dentists beginning to look toward the twilight of their careers, and we need to find ways to recruit new dentists to work in this growing community. So this is hopefully will be one of those assets to do that. All right, this is a resolution. A roll call.
Councilmember Swenson.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Dockin.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
DeBleek.
Aye.
Reese.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. We're on number 13, the consideration of an ordinance to rezone certain lands from G1. What is G1?
Government institutional.
Government institution to residential 2. Who's going to comment on that? Bruce?
Mayor Heike, members of the council, First Step Inc. of Willmar has proposed rezoning the former Lafayette School property from G1 or GI from government institutional to R2, 1 and 2 family residential for the purpose of operating a commercial daycare center. The Planning Commission considered this request at a public hearing at their last meeting and recommended to the council that the rezoning be approved. It's a recommendation of staff that the ordinance be introduced for a public hearing on May 7th, 2007.
Thank you, Bruce.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for a public hearing for this ordinance on May 7th regarding the old Lafayette School property. Further comment? Those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Now we are down to departmental reports and miscellany. We have a resolution that needs to be taken care of. Kevin, can you help us with that?
Mr. Hopkins will fill you in, sir.
Steve, can you explain what this resolution is?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, before you tonight is a resolution calling for a public hearing on an ordinance authorizing the issuance of $2,155,000 in general obligation improvement bonds, Series 2007B. This bond issue is the second bond issue issued by the city this year. It is to finance the 2007 street improvements and the 19th Avenue paving project. The anticipated total cost of the project is a little over $5.2 million. The amount to be financed is the $2.1 million that I mentioned, and of that, $1.2 million will be assessed. So the action needed tonight is a resolution calling for a public hearing on the ordinance.
All right, thank you, Bruce. Or, Steve. Thank you, Steve.
Getting late.
That is getting late. Council?
Move the recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
There's a motion and a second for a hearing for this ordinance to issue a street bond issue of $2,155,000. That hearing is set for May 21st. Right, Steve?
May 7th.
May 7th, thank you. Further comment about that? Those in favor of that motion, that's a roll call.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Roll call.
Councilmember Gardner.
Aye.
Dockin.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
DeBleek.
Aye.
Reese.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Swenson.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Two things that I have under miscellany. One is the council has, one of its priorities is setting up this housing task force. And at the next council meeting, I will present to the council the members that have been submitted by several of you, although there are a couple of members of the council who've not given me any members. This is your last chance if you want to identify anybody in the community that you think should be on this housing task force. I could use a couple of senior citizens. So if anybody is interested in identifying some individuals of that nature. Otherwise, we have a former city council member, Steve Amon, has said that he would serve on the committee, which I am very appreciative of. Doug Bjornberg, who was a former chairman of the Planning Commission, has been recommended, and I'm looking forward to that. And we have some people from the realty area and other citizens. So if anybody wants to give me any more names, I'll give you the list at the next meeting, and then we'll launch it. And again, the anticipation is that this committee will be reviewing the current ordinances and policies that the city has regarding housing and studying it and making recommendations back to the city council. All right. The other thing is I think it would be appropriate to have 1 or 2 council members function as liaisons to this committee. I don't think they should be voting members of the committee, but I think it is appropriate that they would attend the meetings as liaison representing the council. So if anybody's inclined to do that, let me know that also. Thank you. The other thing is the issue about the airport and...
Les, did you make a comment?
I thought that Councilwoman Swenson and my name were given when we first talked about this.
Did we already decide that?
Yeah, right.
Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, Jim and Cindy then. All right, thanks. Regarding the airport, I'm not going to veto the action of the City Council of last meeting because I think you would simply override my veto, and I don't want to do that. But I do wish that the Public Works Safety Committee would consider a couple of points that I was making at the last meeting, and the 2 points are this. One is it's not clear who all the fuel handlers are at the airport. I think we need some kind of a list or a registration of who is handling fuel at this airport. And the second issue, whether that's a permitting process or a fee, apparently, there's not much interest in a fee structure, but I think it is appropriate that we have some kind of registration or listing of fuel handlers. The other thing is the insurance issue. And in talking to some of the pilots, I'm not hearing objections to that. I did hear some objections from a couple pilots, but a few of them have also said they don't see that as a problem. I think it would be appropriate that insurance, that those who handle the fuel tell us that they have adequate insurance that covers their actions in case there's any problem, and that indemnifies the city in the case that there is some kind of a spill of some nature or a fire situation. The fact that we've never had a problem, I don't think is enough of an argument. Just look at ourselves. How many of us have insurance on our houses, and have we ever had any major problem with our houses? I don't. Most of us probably have not. Maybe somebody has, but I think it's common sense to consider the safety of the airport. It is a major facility for this community. I'd like the Public Safety Committee to revisit that issue, and I think you would get some interest from the pilots in cooperating with that. So those are my comments, and I would refer that back to Public Works and Public Safety for further consideration. Future council meetings here. Finance, anybody know about a finance meeting?
Monday the 23rd.
April 23rd, 4:45, City Finance. Public Works, Public Safety.
Tuesday the 24th.
April 24th, Public Works, Public Safety.
4:45.
4:45. Community Development.
Not scheduled, Mr. Mayor.
Labor.
Mr. Mayor, Wednesday, the 25th, I believe it is, at 4:45.
April 25th, 4:45, Labor. Any other announcements before the council tonight?
Mayor, could I just remind them all of the Board of Review?
Okay, Kevin, would you explain when that is?
Boy, what was showing up time? 11 o'clock?
Monday at 11.
Monday at 11 o'clock.
What's the date on that?
April
23rd.
23rd.
April 23rd, beginning at 11 o'clock, is the Board of Review and Equalization.
Right.
And that's the meeting where people from the community who wish to discuss or appeal their property tax situation can come before the City Council to talk about that. The City Council will all be present, along with some members of the City Assessor's Department. That's Monday, April 23rd, beginning at 11 o'clock at City Hall. Anything else?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I think just a point of clarification on that also. I believe that is in the upstairs meeting room.
Upstairs at City Hall.
Right.
Councilmember Dockin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Fourth Ward Cops meeting is Monday, the 23rd, Calvary Church.
Fourth Ward Community-Oriented Policing meeting, Monday, April 23rd at 7 p.m.
Calvary Church.
At Calvary Lutheran Church. Thank you, Jim. Any other announcements?
Mr. Mayor, there's a Ward 1 COP meeting.
When is that?
April 17th at the Senior Citizen Center.
April 17th, Ward 1 Community-Oriented Policing meeting at the Senior Citizen meeting starting at 7 p.m.
That would be tomorrow evening.
Tuesday evening.
Yeah.
Thank you. Senior Citizen Center, COPS. Okay. Now, we've got two department reports. We have Public Works and Finance. Mel, are you ready to go? I'd like to welcome Mel Odens, our city engineer, for his annual Public Works report. Welcome.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, before you is I handed out previously the annual report. It's relatively large. It's also tabbed, so I will do my best to get through it, and hopefully you can follow along as we go through it. This is going to cover 5 areas: engineering, the maintenance, the waste treatment plant, airport, and then the City Hall auditorium. The part of it that I don't cover in here is the capital improvement work, other than in narrative form we're doing at the Civic Center. 44 staff in Public Works Department, a little over 15 square miles for the City of Willmar. It includes Willmar and Foot Lake, and 129 miles is what we have. As we turn the page, we start with the engineering tab. 6 personnel within engineering. The Public Works Safety Committee is listed at the top. The next page is a picture. You'll notice that we got a picture of all the departments this year. Traditionally, the engineering department's been known for street construction, reconstruction. In the past, when I started, we used to have 3 contracts. It'd be reconstruction, construction, and underground. Today, the last few years, we've had 10 contracts, different projects, and this year in 07, we've got over 15. So what traditionally was known as just street work, we do get involved with a lot of other activity besides streets. The second paragraph, in 2006, we did $5.1 million just in street work. Compare that to a few years ago, and it's been doubled. We did about 2.2 in 02. If you turn the page, there's some things that were added or changed in 06. I've listed them in no particular order, other than when I was writing the report, what came to mind. The first one I would list is the go for one call rules. One of the things that has changed for us is that we've got to do a positive response system to all go for one locates. Either mark them or respond to them on the internet. The second thing is stormwater regulations. As you recall, we've had to do a citywide NPDES permit that became effective in 07. I was elected to be the Secretary-Treasurer of the City Engineers Association in Minnesota last year. I'm currently the Vice Chairman. And then, of course, the wastewater treatment relocation project. Once-in-a-lifetime projects would be the opening of the municipal airport last year. Typically, there's only, I believe, 7 done in the nation. We started the waste treatment plant project, the Civic Center expansion connection, and then also the industrial park expansion. Opening up over 600 acres in an industrial park doesn't happen very often. Down at the bottom of the page, we've done 10 areas in reconstruction and 5 areas in overlay. Flipping to the next page, shows our new construction. You've seen these lists before. Down at the bottom, in 06, we did 10 contracts, 06, 01 through 06, 09, with 04 being split. We did a little over $4.6 million plus engineering would make it a little over $5 million in work. The next page is our critical rating results. Every year in the spring, I shouldn't say every year, every other year in the spring, we rate all our streets, and we're just completing that as I speak. We have about 585 segments that make up the 129 miles. If you look at the bottom or in the middle of the page, you'll notice that that's a kind of a history of our reconstruction, new construction, overlay, and seal coat. You'll notice in 2003 it started to pick up, and that primarily I would attribute that to the utility fee, where we don't assess for water and sewer and minor storm sewer. Turning the page, street miles. I listed the previous 4 years, but our current street miles is 129.55, and if you look right below that, in 2002, it was 123.06 miles, so we had just about 6.5 miles of new street added just in the last 5 years. Now I would refer you to the street and park tab. "22 staff out at the garage." We've also got some staff at the Civic Center that aren't listed here. Turning the page, there's the photo once again of that department. In this department, for the next 3 sheets, I've just got kind of an executive summary that I'll briefly go down. The remaining part of the report is tables and a little more detail of what I've got in the summary. The top activities, typically especially in the last few years, have been, as far as hours worked, are trees, snow, airport, and then, of course, all the ball field recreation, snowmobile, and ice rink preparation. Starting at the top, snow removal. 2006 actually was a pretty good year for snow removal. We only got about 10 and a half inches of snow in the calendar year 06. It did make up for it once we got into 07, however. But one thing to do note, and we've talked about this before, but with the light snow, it was substantial labor savings and overtime. We had over $25,000 that we were able to not use and leave in the budget. The 10-year average is about 50 inches, so we were substantially less than that. Going down to the brush site, compost disposal site, open again from April through November. Earl Olson, he's been there 11 years, watches for us, as well as Gaylord Peterson. He's been there for 7 years. Once again, very active, 3,000 loads a month on average, about 250 loads a day. What an asset to the citizens of this area. Tree planting, quite a few trees. We plant about 400 trees. Took us about 490 hours, a little over an hour a tree. That's 3 crews, two people per crew. Every year we also do an Arbor Day event. In 2006 was Gene Heitzman's class from the 3rd grade class from Lincoln Elementary School. We planted 3 trees at the Aquatic Center. And every year the mayor or representative of the council comes and talks to the class. Very popular event. We've been doing that since, I believe, 1993.
Did we schedule one for this?
No, we have not, but
okay.
We still need to find a location, and then we're going to schedule it in the next couple weeks.
Sure.
Tree removal. If you're looking at the tables in the back, you may see that not so many trees were marked in 06, but if you look at this summary sheet, we've taken 709 trees in 2006. Stump removal was 330. We didn't leave 400 stumps on purpose. I guess we did leave them on purpose because those are private trees. The 330 were in the boulevard, but the 400 and some were private. It is an issue when you have an outbreak of dead trees like we had. When you have that many private trees, we're down to 23 trees left total, and all 23 are private trees. Very hard to get to. You're always open to property damage, lawn damage, hitting something. You got to piece them down. They're very expensive to do. 709 trees were removed, 6,700 hours. One thing we were able to do is we were able to actually get some tree trimming in. We did 2,000 trees trimmed in 06. Sign work at the bottom. I believe you heard it earlier, but we did do some sign work, about 600 hours, and this was the first year that we did establish truck routes in the city of Willmar. Turning the page, street maintenance. 37 days were spent patching streets. We use about an average of 675 to 680 tons of hot mix. The number of hours were up about 600 hours from previous years because we were able to work on more small patches this year versus the large ones. In the past 3-4 years, we've done more larger ones with bigger equipment, but it doesn't cover as many areas. Mosquito control. I believe this is our 4th year in mosquito control. Runs us about $25,000 a year or $2,000 a time. We do spray mosquitoes from middle of June to September. Last year was exceptionally dry, so we were able to quit in July. Down at the bottom of the page, ice rinks, hockey rinks, the 4 skating rinks we keep, Hilltop, Lincoln, Garfield, and Lincoln. And then also the hockey rinks are Garfield and Lincoln. And that pretty much is kind of an overview of the public works. I would now refer you to the wastewater tab. 11 staff out at the waste treatment plant. Once again, turn into a couple pages. There's the staff, a picture of the staff. And then I've also got a brief executive summary of the waste treatment plant. Starting it off is the Minnesota Environmental Science and Economic Review Board, commonly referred to as MESRB. That's a board that we became a member of a few years ago, and really what that does for us is it's another set of eyes to watch the regulations as they come down, and regulations that are in place, and how to keep on top of the issues related to wastewater treatment and the environment. As you go down the page, we have the phosphorus permit and also the NPDES permit, which we have at the waste treatment plant. If you notice the dates in there, the phosphorus limits is by November 30th of 2010, a date that we're very familiar with. And also the NPDES permit has the expiration date of November 30th, 2009. If you recall, some of these were the cost drivers for the new plant. And if you turn the page, it's also one of the cost drivers was the Lake Pepin issue that was pretty well publicized over the last few years. And really what that is excess nutrients as well as turbidity. And the issue for the city of Willmar is that the Minnesota River, where we outfall into, contributes about 80 to 90% of the sediment load. So you can see that this plant's important not only to the city, to the Minnesota River, but also to the Lake Pepin area. Middle of the page, the waste treatment plant relocation and conveyance system project. We get monthly updates from our consultant, so you're probably pretty well up to speed on that. But we've done work in 3 phases in '06. The one was we got most of the way through the planning phase. We started the design phase, which, as you recall, we just completed the 30% design. And then the construction phase, we did the first phase of the interceptor down through the Waterview Business Park. Turning the page, 25 lift stations in the city, or that we manage, 16 in the city and 9 around Eagle Lake. The middle of the page has the waste treatment averages for the year. Down at the bottom of the biosolids, we have 2,200 acres that we land apply, or we have reserved for land application for the biosolids. We have 1 industrial discharge permit, that's Jenny-O Turkey Store, and their contribution remains about average over the last couple of years, with a slight decrease in '06. Turning to the airport tab. One staff out there, Melissa Galvan, was hired in January of '06, so she's been there just over a year. What you think of when you think of the airport is it's an important project for the long-term economic vitality of this area. 2006 was a year of transition and a year of completing all new aspects. That project started with land acquisition in 2000. In '06, we completed 3 projects, the fueling system, hangar relocation, and the apron expansion. So right up until the day it opened, we were working on construction projects. I put the old airport inventory in here as well as the new. The old airport was, if you remember, used from January through September 5th of last year. I've got all the inventory, the runway length. If you turn the page to the last flight was on September 5 at the old airport for inbound, and then it was permanently closed for all traffic on September 12th at 6 p.m. There was a slight decrease in fuel activity in '06, but that was probably somewhat expected with all the construction and the activity and the transition going on. If you turn about 3 pages, you'll get to the new airport summary. It's basically the same in some respects as the old airport summary. However, what you don't see is we now have precision approach with an ILS. We have a runway protection zone that's in compliance. We have a flight path that's over more agricultural fields and not populated areas. And we also have a state-of-the-art facility, not only for the city and a terminal building, but also for the FBO, who has built a maintenance hangar as well as a hangar to the west of his maintenance hangar. And then as you look through it, we got pictures from the opening day as well as pictures of the conference room, which has been a very popular room for various groups. I know we've met out there with the waste treatment plant, some of the workshops that we've had. It works very well for anybody that wants to use the conference room at the airport, and you can contact the airport manager out there to reserve that room. Last section is the auditorium in the city office. We have 2 staff, Roscoe and Betty, that maintain the maintenance of these facilities. And as you look down in the auditorium, some of the work that we've done, probably the most notable thing that was done in '06 was cleaning up the rifle range and all the lead and soundproofing and replacing some various items in there, as well as painting. A lot of lead was taking out of the firing range. Took a lot of elbow grease, a lot of labor, but our staff did it, and it's made a huge difference. And then the last thing is, last page of the report is work that we've done in City Hall. And that concludes the report, and I'd be available for questions.
Thanks, Mel. Very large, thorough report. Any comments? Councilmember Dockett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mel. Did I understand you to say there are only 23 trees, diseased trees, left to take down? Or
that's correct.
Is that correct?
Yep.
And how many did we have when we started to take down total?
Well, I won't search through this page. We removed 709 in '06. We marked 331 in '06, so we started the year off somewhere in the 400 range. And we were able to remove all but 23 of them. And primarily what happened there is, as we geared up to make if you call it the last rush to get all the trees done, the weather got warm, and on privates, you got to be kind of careful, because if the ground's either got to be froze or dry, or you can't get in somebody's yard.
And what is our policy on trees on private property?
We remove Dutch elm trees, but it's their responsibility to remove the stump. That's the current policy.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mel, thanks for the report. Just a brief question. There was a gentleman earlier tonight talking about the north part of Lakeland Drive, and I was wondering what in the transportation plan might be coming up for that. Are we looking at having to go to a little more robust design for that road in the future?
The road, the road, I believe, is designed for the traffic it's carrying, but part of the problem is it's getting older, it's getting more brittle. It's eligible for an overlay. What we were waiting for on the overlay was with the waste treatment collection system review, there's a section in there that we were reviewing the capacity, and I believe we're going to have to replace a section in there. And also the routing of the whole wastewater treatment collection system. We didn't want to overlay it or do some kind of a reconditioning, if you will, and then have to dig it up. So I think that we can proceed with that and yes, there will be some cost, but that road was built, you know, it's was built some time ago as well.
But are we looking at having to go with a little more robust design than what we've had in the past?
What we do is we just design it. We're looking at more 10-ton route than 9-ton. You know, you'll recall that there's a lot of discussion on heavier trucks and larger trucks, and we don't want to get caught. But on the flip side, it costs more money. We don't pass the over. A little more tricky.
Okay. So, thank you.
Yep.
Mel, thanks for your report. A lot of information there.
Yep. Thanks.
I'd like to welcome our City Finance Director, Steve Okens, for his annual department report. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I don't know if City Administrator Schmidt puts me last for a number of different reasons. I think one of them is all the ink and paper from all the other departmental reports are gone, so he knows mine doesn't take up a lot, and or that numbers. It's hard to do a presentation and have it with numbers and not put people to sleep. So I'm going to try to summarize this as much as I can tonight and kind of shorten it up a little bit due to the lateness of the hour. And just like to remind all the citizens that not only my report, but all the departmental reports are on the city website. And all the department directors are always available for questions or comments. And again, they are all listed on the city's website with their phone numbers. And I know they all welcome the public to come down to the city office and ask any questions they may have. There are a few items I definitely want to mention. On the first page, the staff. I have one of the senior members that working for the city in the payroll clerk, Diane Jones. She's been with the city 34 years on May 1st. And anytime you have senior staff in any position, they're worth their weight in gold. And she pretty much takes her tasks and runs with them, and I don't have to do a lot of supervision with that one. Kara Gluth was not updated in the report. She was promoted to the accounting supervisor in April of 2006, and Peggy Hansen was our new hire. She was hired in July as the information technician. The finance office staff are the accounting and the data processing. Our duties are to record and report all the financial activities for the city, including their component units of Rice Hospital and the municipal utilities. Jumping to page 3 is really kind of the heart of what the council does, that process and the budget process. This is kind of a summation of how and a gauge of how the city has done when we give you the financial report. The budget process is really where all the work and discussion takes place. The process to set the levels of operation, the different programs, the fund levels and reserves, and that's where the council really should concentrate their time in reviewing policies and procedures and possible changes at that time. That calendar, we'll be starting that. The Finance Committee actually will be approving the budget calendar at their meeting on Monday with the culmination of the whole process in December when the council adopts not only the tax levy but the budget as well. Pages 4 through 6 are the regulatory agencies and the rules and regulations that we need to follow in those reporting and recording of all the financial activities. Pages 7 through 8 is the general operating fund of the city. That is the fund that is cumulative of all the activities where the council has not designated or set aside something special or wanted items to be recorded separately. In 2006, excess revenues over expenditures were in the amount of $744,000. You'll see that there were some excess revenues over last year and the expenditures, but the total for 2006 excess revenues over expenditures was $744,000. The expenditures were right on what we had programmed. We programmed 2006 to be where the revenues came in expenditures for 2005. We were $30,000 off. So they were right on the nose. The areas where we were in excess were the permit revenues, the interest earnings, and the refunds and reimbursements. We talk about those every year in our budgeting process. Permit revenues have been running extremely high, as you've heard in the community development report. The construction, I guess it's, when is the construction going to peak? We haven't noticed that, so we do conservatively budget in that area. Interest as well. Interest rates have been creeping up, so but those are all areas. The reserve levels are really all used or have a process to be used. There's a capital outlay, emergency, the self-insurance, and the working capital. And those, again, are all set during the budgeting process. We've received numerous times excellent comments from Moody's, who rates the city as far as financial stability. The excess dollars of the $744,000 that I mentioned earlier will be programmed into the 2008 budget process, and that is, again, by council policy. Pages 8 through 10 are the special revenue funds. The only one I really want to point out in there, and again, these are all going to be on the city's website, is the local option sales tax. That was 2006 was the first year that we started collecting the local option sales tax again. And again, those were for the purposes of the Civic Center Blue Line connection, the purchase of some land in the northeast part of the community, finishing the hiking and biking trails, and the redevelopment of the old airport site. We had programmed in, based on previous sales tax dollars that we had, $1.5 million. That came in at 1.7. Of that $1.7 million, $1 million is already designated for the Civic Center annexation on contracts. The remaining $700 will be worked into the biking, hiking trails, land acquisition, and the redevelopment of the old airport site. Page 11 gives you some information about the debt service for the community. We are allowed to general obligation, which is tax, put it on the tax rolls, 2% of the estimated market value. The city has no general obligation, straight general obligation bonds that would apply to that. That is one thing that Moody's comments every time that we talk to them every year. We have an A1 rating, and Moody's looks at that, as well as the fund balance levels and the policies that the council do as far as fund balances. The remainder of 11 through 12 are the construction funds. These are all the activities. Mr. Owens had kind of mentioned that. The street construction, we have a board that we track all the contracts and stuff at the city office. We have about 16 categories on that where we can contract and monitor contracts. Mel outdid himself for 2007. I think he added 15 to that, so we need to add another board, or he's got to clean some of those up. Waste treatment plant, he also mentioned, will be another project that Mr. Holmes has reassured us that we're going to handle this in a lot better fashion than the airport, which is we had 13 state grants and 7 federal grants. It was and is going to be a project that is completed, and we're projecting to do that at the end of 2007. Page 13, again, is the waste treatment. It reflects the anticipation of the increased operation costs of the new plant. You'll see the profits are going up there, but the plan that was put in place by the council when they started instituting the rate increases was to use cash balances along with financing, so that when the plant's in operation by the year 2010, that you will not see a large spike in waste treatment rates, and that they would have gradually went up. And so those profits will be put back into the plant to offset capital costs as we continue through the project. Pages 14 through 16 are the component units of Rice Hospital and the municipal utilities. Rice Hospital changed their presentation on us this year. They used to show their cost centers like Rice Care Center and Home Medical. They're no longer doing that. They've classified them into the salaries and the supplies and those types of categories. That's something that we've just received, so we haven't had an opportunity to talk to them about that. They, too, will be coming to the Finance Committee on Monday to do their presentation and answer any questions that the council may have. The municipal utilities is a revenue stream for the city. If you look at it in the overall standing, it's about a 4% return on the city's value of the asset. And that's been in place for a number of years. I was going to spend a long time and a lot of information on joint powers agreements, but with the lateness of the evening, I'll save that for a Finance Committee and do that at that point. There are a number of joint powers agreements: Candioi County and City of Willmar Economic Development, Community Education and Rec, Candioi Area Transit, Pioneer Land Library System, the Minnesota Environmental Service and Economic Review Board, and the Southwest West Central Service Cooperative. That's just the joint powers agreements. Each one is set up differently, so it mandates us that we account for them differently. We're the fiscal agent for one of them, and there are a number of other nonprofit organizations that we're dealing with, and governmental agencies. We have a whole list of those, and again, I'll talk about that at a Finance Committee meeting just so that you're aware of that. And again, that will be posted out on the website as well. The last categories of payroll and data processing. The only thing I'd like to mention there is that we will be experiencing a little bit more staff time in 2007. All the labor contracts were settled after the first of the year, so there was a back pay issue that we run into some extra staff time. Data processing, our goal and objective in 2007 is to standardize all the meeting rooms with new electronic equipment, and so that presentations will be less disruptive to meetings, and you won't have people tearing down equipment and fans running on projectors, and that they'll be instructed to bring their presentation on a disc. When they're done, we'll just pop out the disc and they'll go, but we're going to standardize that in all our meeting rooms. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Steve, for your good report. Any comments from the council members? I think everybody wants to go home. If anybody has any questions, go see Steve in his office. Thanks, Steve. All right, I think that concludes our agenda for tonight. Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
So move.